Oh, YouTube, what are you doing to me? Hello, everybody. Oh, YouTube didn't want to get started streaming today. Assuming, of course, that we are right now streaming. It appears, based on my information here, that we are. But I'm not, the lights aren't even on. I'm not even close to being ready for what we're doing. Well, I am sort of close to being ready for what we're doing. Let's not overstate this. Let's turn some lights on. All of them immediately and go. Let's see what happens. Oh, something's working. All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome. You can join the chat at professormesser.com/live. I am going to do a quick intro. Normally, you don't hear this part because I do it before we go live, but I wanted to do it now. Okay. Here we go. I probably need some of this stuff. We got another 5 minutes before we go live, so we're fine. I'm James Messer, and you're listening to the Professor Messer Security Plus study group. This study group was recorded on February 21st, 2018. If you'd like to watch a video replay, visit my website at professormesser.com. And one more. I'm James Messer, and you're listening to the Professor Messer Security Plus Study Group After Show. This after show was recorded on February 21st, 2018. If you'd like to watch a video replay, visit my website at professormesser.com. See, there we go. All right, that part's done. Let's change the website so that it shows that we are live. My Security Plus Study Group is right now. Click here to join us /live and save the changes and reset the cookie in case you hidden it. It is hidden. It is hidden. Let's bring up at least some of the bookmarks I'm going to need for later. I'm probably going to also need, what else don't I need? I don't need a lot of things on my screen. I don't need this. I don't need this. Premiere Pro. What's it doing up? Oh, I remember. I was doing stuff. I was playing around. I was seeing what was what. What? Let's get rid of Slack. Let's get rid of OmniGraffle. Let's get rid of pretty much everything. So at this point, fortunately, I beat the announcements that are automatically sent out about the study group being live, because study group is live. So there you go. What else do we need to do? What was I doing? I was doing something just then. Let's see, I've got that going. Recording is going down here. Recording is going here. Recording is going online. I need to get one other device in here to do some of this recording stuff. And it would actually work pretty well if I was to do that. What else do I need to have done? I got rid of all the junk. Oh, I know. I know what I was doing. Do you know what I was doing? No, I don't know what you were doing. This is the SY0501. Let's pull up the stuff I'm going to need for later. Like my course notes. Those might be useful to have for later. Let's view maybe 2 pages. And let's get rid of the thumbnails. Hide that. There we go. Very good. What else? What else we need to do? I think we're good. Oh, we're checking in. Little Rock, Tucker, Georgia. Haven't been to Tucker in a while. Used to work in an office out of Tucker, Georgia. How you like that? Germany, welcome. Although I will not be doing any in German today. The last name kind of throws you. UK, welcome. Fargo, North Dakota, welcome. Miami, it's pretty nice out today. Got to tell you, 78 degrees. If we look at birdfeeder.live, how are things going out there? I still haven't turned on the audio for that, but it does say that it's 77 degrees Fahrenheit. So not bad. Not bad. And no birds. Where's all the birds? I have not done a check. I cannot even see can't even see everything. I need to get this whole studio changed around. Let's do a camera check, though. That's me. Hi. How are you? Good to see you. There's the bird cam. There is the actual bird cam. See, I called this the bird cam before I had the actual bird cam. This is the bird feeder .live, and then whatever's on that screen over there. So that's it's all working. It's all working. And just as I do that, see, now we got some birds. Now we got some activity. Birds checking it out, wondering what's going on. It's a little windy out. You can see it's a little stormy. No, there's no delays here. If you're getting a delay, then there's something going on with YouTube, which is entirely possible today. Things were a little bit wonky on the YouTube side getting things started. So let me see if I can get everything I need together here. I think I do have pretty much everything together here. How are we doing on time? It's time to start. How did that happen? How did those things happen? Usually I'm 30 seconds late. What are we doing looking at birds for? Let's do a study group. Except I have to now remove the birds from my screen so I can see what's going on. Okay, now we will start a study group. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the February 2018 Professor Messer Security Plus study group, the one that snuck up on us. You were watching in the pre-show. YouTube was a little bit slow today. They were having a few technical issues, as they say, but they managed to get it going. So thank you, YouTube. They're the ones who provide the streaming service for us absolutely free. Anybody can do that. I highly recommend you check that out. Welcome to the study group, something we do every month for Security Plus. Yeah, we also do other study groups throughout the month. We have A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus. And of course, the replays for all of these are available on my website at professormesser.com. You can go back years and watch these study groups if you really want to. I'll be doing a lot of Q&A during this first hour. So I'm going to show you exactly how we do that. It's all online and we do it together and it's voting and it's very interesting. You'll love it. And then the second half, I'll open up the phone lines. It's our after show. I like to call it because they're open phone lines. You can talk about anything you'd like. I'm able to do these study groups thanks to you providing all the support throughout the month. You've purchased all of my course notes. You've been watching my videos. And of course, every single one of my videos, every minute of them is available for you to watch absolutely free from our website, professormesser.com. If you're watching today and you want to participate, you can always go to professormesser.com/live. When we're doing these live events, there's a live event chat there that I'm looking at right now, and you'll be able to participate. You can also help support the site by purchasing an offline version of these videos that comes with the videos. It comes with MP3 audio files of the video content and my course notes. A digital version of my course notes comes with that too, all bundled together. If you want to learn more about that, you can find it at professormesser.com/get-sec+. We also have other things you should also see. Of course, links on Twitter, links on YouTube. You type in professormesser.com/ the name of the thing you'd like to visit, /Twitter, /YouTube, /Facebook, /Instagram. Just put in anything you'd like after that and see where it goes. That's a little fun thing you can do while the 404 arrows will pop up on my website. There are some free Q&A questions and answers. That's what that stands for on my website. You can go to professormesser.com/popquiz, and I've just got a bunch of archived questions from these study groups available there. So at least over 100 questions for the SY0401 exam. The SY0501 has not been out quite long enough to compile enough questions to put in there, but every month, we're doing that. You'll be able to make that happen by going to professormesser.com/popquiz, and you'll be able to see exactly what is there. Also, podcasts available. These podcasts are available at professormesser.com/podcasts. You can have the podcast link. The RSS feed is there that you can plug right into your podcast reader. whatever you're using. Your reader will be able to import any of these RSS feeds that I have available, because I have an RSS feed available for A+, for Network Plus, and Security Plus. If you just want to listen to it, there are links on this page where you can just listen at professormesser.com/podcasts. Make sure you type that in exactly the way I said it. Today, we're going to be doing Q&A. Today is a lot of Q&A, and we're doing this live on the internet in real time through your browser. It's an amazing technology. The way that you can participate in this live event is going to professormesser.com/QA. Now, one thing to remember, and please don't send me an email about this because there's nothing I can do about it. Once this is over, there's no more live Q&A. You have to be here for the live event for that professormesser.com/QA link to work. Unfortunately, there's no way to replay it after the fact so that it plays along with you, which would be super cool. Maybe that'll be the next iteration of this product from Socrative. It takes you to this website called Socrative. It automatically will place you into the room. And if you have to type in a room name, let's say you're on the Socrative student app on your mobile device, the room name is Professor Messer, ProfessorMesser. All of this information is available for you to see by going to professormesser.com/live. One of the ways that we check to see if you're able to see this exact what's going on is I ask a question. We have put a question there from last month. So if you're watching last month, you should know the answer to this question. If you weren't watching last month, then maybe this will be all new for you. Here's the question. You've discovered an unrecognized IP address in your network, and you'd like to remotely identify any services that may be running on this device. Which of the following would provide you with this information? Would it be netstat, TCP dump, ipconfig, nmap, or netcat? So hopefully you're able to get to the website, professormesser.com/QA. You're able to see the question there. You're able to answer it because on my side, I get to see all of these questions as well. So I get to follow along with exactly as people are typing in. And you can see 61% of you at this point have said nmap. 35% of you have said netstat. So we've got a couple of different options available for you there. Maybe you've looked at both of those. Hardly anybody. 2% said TCP dump, 2% said ipconfig, 3% said netcat. We're really tied between both of those. If you think you know the answer, you can go to professormesser.com/QA and answer right there. Please don't put any tips or any answers into the chat room. We're all going into this completely blind. We're going to try to figure it out as if we're sitting right there and trying to make it happen live and in person for us. So let's see how we do with that. The answer to this one, for those of you that were watching last month, is nmap. Nmap is one where you can remotely probe, identify, get responses from remote devices and interpret those responses in a way to be able to answer this one. So those of you that answered nmap on this one got this one absolutely right. Why wouldn't it be netstat, though? 30% of you said netstat. Netstat would tell you and identify services that may be running on your device, but it will not identify services that are running on another computer. Netstat is just for your system. So netstat will tell you a bunch of things. It won't even necessarily identify the services. It'll give you port numbers that might be communicating out. But if you need to identify services that may be running on a remote device, nmap is like magic. It will absolutely send packets to a remote device, receive the responses to those, and based on the response or even how the response is constructed, it will make a determination of what operating system, what services, what port numbers, extensive information about that device without ever authenticating into that device. It's amazing to be able to do that. So that's why netstat is not the correct answer in this case. The only possible answer between all of these would be indeed nmap. You didn't even have a choice between either of those to do this. There are a lot of things that you're going to need to know on your Security Plus exam. And right now there's two Security Plus exams. There is the SY0401 and the SY0501. What's up with that? Now, which one do we even choose? These are constant messages I get multiple times a day. People saying, wait a second, I can take either one of these right now. The SY0401 is the exam version that was released in April of 2014. So long ago. It's retiring, though, in July of this year. So at the end of July, you're going to see the SY0401 will disappear forever, the English-speaking version of the SY0401. If it's a language other than English, you've got until the end of the year. But for most of the people watching this, most of you are going to be taking the English language version of this. They released a new version of the exam, the SY0501, on October the 4th of 2017. So it's been out a few months now. Now you can right now take either. It's a little bit of an overlap period where you're able to do that. So if you've been studying for 6 months for the SY0401 and suddenly they release the 501, you don't have to shift gears. Keep studying the 401 just as long as you can make sure you're able to pass it before the end of July. If you are just getting into this, this might be a good time to start with the 501. That way you don't have a need to finish all of your studies and pass this exam before the end of July. You've got plenty of time. If I was starting right now, I would choose the 501 because it takes me forever to study for these particular exams, and I would be too concerned that I'd be pushing up against that deadline at the end of July. Now, whether you take the 401 or the 501, you get exactly the same certification. The 401, the 501 are a version of an exam. The actual result of passing either one of those exams is exactly the same certification called the Security+. So it doesn't matter which one you want to take. Once you pass it, you get exactly the same cert. So keep that in mind. The 501 isn't better or worse than the 401. The 401 isn't better or worse than the 501. They're just different versions of the questions that you're going to get. So don't be too wrapped up in that one is newer and one is older, because ultimately employers only care if you're certified. And quite honestly, once you pass your exam to maintain that certification, you probably aren't going to take that exam ever again. There's too many other ways to maintain your certification that most people will never take that exam again. Once you get into the room to take the exam, it's one exam. You don't have to take multiples of Security+. You don't have to take both the 401 and the 501. Just choose one. That's a very important thing to remember. You do not have to take both of these exams, only one of them. They're 90 minutes long. You might get a maximum of 90 questions. And the scoring's a little weird. It's between a scale of 100 and 900. So there is a 750 passing score you have to get. Does that mean there's 800 total points and you have to get 650 of those 800? It's difficult to calculate this out. Plus, on top of that, every question appears to have a different number of points that they're worth. So you can't do percentages here. They intentionally make this difficult, don't they? But the important part is if you answer the questions correctly, answer as many as possible, don't worry about the details, do as best as you can. At the end of the exam, you'll get to see exactly how you did with these. You'll get both multiple choice questions on the exam, and you'll get some questions that are what they call performance-based. These might be multiple choice questions or fill in the blank, matching, putting things in a particular order. They might put you into a command prompt and ask you to perform some functions of that command prompt. You'll notice in the 501 exam, there are some command prompts that you're going to need to know. So make sure you have a look at that. Now, I've got a performance-based question for you. We like to start these study groups off with a performance-based question. I'm going to quickly change the way it looks on my screen real quick so we can see exactly what this is going to look like. I'm going to delete a few things because the performance-based question I have for you is very specific to firewalls. And here's the question. Make sure we're going to do this one first off, just like on your exam. So the question is, I want you to configure 2 firewall rules that block the management server from browsing to the web. So here you go. This is the one where you're going to now look at a particular image. They're going to give you, this is just like on your exam. I wouldn't say this is exactly the same question you're going to get on your exam, but this is the feel, the type of question that you'll get on your exam. And here is the question. Here's the diagram. We want to configure 2 firewall rules that block the management server from browsing to the web. Make sure you look through exactly what's being asked of you. Make sure you look through the entire question. You examine. You have to, of course, now be able to look at a network diagram and figure out where things are going. And you want to be able to set up these rules in a proper way so that you're able to have the correct type of rules in here. And you see I've got some blank rules here. Rule number 1 and number 2. And this is one's going to be source IP, destination IP, protocol, port number, and allow or block. Make sure you do that. Go through these details. Having the most information possible on these questions is useful, and they really don't give you a lot here. They just say, configure 2 firewall rules that block the management server from browsing to the web. And this is a fill-in-the-blank question, which nobody has answered yet, by the way. There we go. We got some answers coming in. So some of you are trying it out. This is one where you're going to have to type it in. There's no multiple choice on this one, which is very common with these performance-based questions. They may just leave it open-ended. They may not give you any options. You have to know this pretty cold to be able to do it. Some of you are doing very well with this one. I thought this one may have a little bit of a twist, but a lot of you are spot on with this particular question. Now, on your exam, you're going to get a series of these performance-based questions right out of the gate. And I'm a little bit anxious when I sit down for a certification exam. I've rushed into the room. I'm, of course, late or just barely on time. They get me into the room. I'm sweating. I'm sitting down. I've got my paper and my pencil. They start the exam. And now the adrenaline is running. I'm not understanding what's in front of me. And I like to jump over the performance-based questions and go to the multiple choice. And then at the end, once I finish all those multiple choice, I jump back to the performance-based questions. The CompTIA exam is one of those few exams for IT certification that allows you to jump to any question at any time. You can go backwards and forwards. Not all exams are like that. So this may be a good opportunity to take advantage of that and jump over the performance-based questions, do the multiple choice, and then come back. We're not doing that, though. Not in this study group. No, sir. You're going to have to answer the question now because you're not going to be able to jump around because I'm the one that jumps around. In this one, we really just go straight through to go through here. Maybe it's something that you can go through. Well, let's do some firewall rules. We've got a number of you that have answered this firewall question. So I want to show you what I would put in for the firewall rules. You can see on this view that we do have a management server that's 10.2.1.47. That was one of the devices that we were talking about. And we want to block them from browsing to the web. The firewall is here. There's a web server here. In fact, you could put either to the internet or to this web server. I would take either one of those since I sort of broadly made this piece here. And let's see what I would have put. Let's assume in this case that we would have gone to the web server. I'll give you some detailed answers on here, and then I'll show you what it would be if we went to the internet. So we've got there's our header of rules. Here's one that would block traffic to the web server. So our rule number 1 would be the source IP of 10.2.1.47. That's the management server. The destination would be 10.1.1.2, which would be right here. And the protocol would be TCP/80. That's the one you would commonly see with HTTP, correct? And then you would block it. So that person would not be able to do that. Now, I asked you in the question, though, for 2 of these to block the management server from browsing to the web, what it really should have said, web server. And this would be 10.2.1.47 to 10.1.1.2. It's exactly the same traffic flow from the management server to the web server. But in this case, I chose TCP 443. Now, a lot of firewalls will allow you to put multiple port numbers into the port number field. So if you're very firewall savvy, you may have just added port 80 and port 443 to rule 1, and you were done. But you could see by this example here, I asked you to configure 2 rules, and that's what I meant. So we need to add both protocols, both 80 for the in the clear HTTP and port 443 for the encrypted HTTPS. Be able to do that. And of course, we need to block both of those. Now, for the reference to everything else, if we wanted to do just generic web blocking, we could do it based on particular addresses or really everything out to the internet and then add other allow rules to everything else. For example, you may want to allow the management server to talk to everything that's a 10.1.1, but then block everything that's everything else. And you would use like 0.0.0.0/0 to specify all IP addresses that might be out there. That may be a good way to do that. You might get a question on the exam that has a diagram with all of these different devices and it's set up a particular way. You need to get very familiar with this common layout, what switch icons look like, what router icons look like, what the firewall is, what these devices are, so that you can quickly understand what the picture is and not have to decipher what you're seeing. You can easily go to the view that's out on the internet. You can search through Google for network diagrams. You get a huge Google image search of network diagrams to be able to do that. So if you answered those, that's one good way to look at setting some firewall rules. And of course, you can go through this as well to be able to see the details and see if you can do some firewall rules. Firewall rules would be a good thing to know for your exam. And if I look through what you answered here, this was a fill in the blank, so I'm not going to show everybody all the answers because they're not compiled. Most of you got either the TCP or the UDP port 80 and port 443. Some of you got both. Most of you got both. It would not be port 8080. Some of you did put port 8080, which is sometimes used as a management port number for IP addresses. It'd be pretty good to have those there. So hopefully this would be a good thing to go through. Maybe you saw some of these performance-based questions and thought, okay, I see what they're going for. You might get a handful of these on your exam. So there may be 3 to 5. Some people get fewer, some people get more. You just never know when you're going in. So that was a good run through of a performance-based question, maybe something that you can think about before walking into your exam. Let's do some multiple choice though. Let's say we're done with the performance-based questions. I've got a multiple choice one for you. And the multiple choice question would be, which of these would be the most significant security concern associated with multi-function printers? Which of these would be the most significant security concern associated with multi-function printers? Would it be A, print and fax information is stored locally in the multifunction device? Would it be B, printed information can be captured with the remote receiver? Would it be C, the printer can be accessed over a wireless network? Would it be D, printed output can be gathered using electromagnetic radiation? Or E, the printer is integrated into the local Active Directory network? Which of those would be the most significant security concern associated with multifunction printers? Maybe that's something you've had to deal with multifunction printers. I guess you have to know what multifunction printers are to be able to answer that question. If you think you do know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA. Please don't answer in the chat room. Please don't answer even putting guesses in there. We're gonna take these cold, as if we sat down in front of the exam. We are taking our look at our questions for the first time. We're trying to answer them without using Google. I'm just saying, not that any of you would do that. I'm just mentioning that perhaps it would be nice if you didn't use Google and you pretend that we really are sitting in front of this and trying to understand what a multifunction printer is. Kind of runs into a challenge trying to understand what some of these are. And maybe you do know. I think a number of you do. I'm going to take a sneak peek at how we're doing. Well, we've got a couple of different options here. You can see as we're answering the question, almost a tie for first, with 39% said print and fax information stored locally in the multifunction device. 32% of you said the printer can be accessed over a wireless network. 14% of you said the printer is integrated into the local Active Directory network. And 10% of you said printed information can be captured with a remote receiver. And nobody said, 0% said printed output can be gathered using electromagnetic radiation. That sounds like a pretty cool thing. Wouldn't that be it? Maybe it would not be it. Maybe it would. We'll have to talk about that, some of the other things that are there. Let's talk about multifunction devices, multifunction printers, multifunction. These are devices that will print, they will fax, whatever that is, and they will scan. So that's useful to have those there. So if you are living in the 90s, you'll be able to fax somebody. If you're living in the todays, maybe you won't even use the scan, probably use your phone. Why use a scanner, a slow scanner on a multifunction device? Our phones, if our phone could just print from the phone, we might have something. From a security perspective, these are dangerous devices because somebody is going up to this device, they're typing in contact information, fax numbers. Sometimes you're calling people. There's sometimes a phone on the side of them because it is connected to a phone line. And a lot of these devices have a spooler inside of them. So this is one where it's storing information on the device. And for security people, anytime we hear that something is being stored somewhere, our ears perk up. We're wondering, what are they storing? Well, this would be a great place if somebody was trying to find all the activity that came from this device. If you wanted to grab all the address book information that was stored on this device, that probably goes to fax machines, whoever you've talked to, whoever you fax, that probably is stored on this multifunction device. If somebody's able to print to this device, you need to make sure you set up the print authorization properly so people authenticate into the printer. And from a security perspective, there may be some of this printouts that you do that are stored in spool files that may not be deleted from the device. Same thing with fax information. It may not delete fax information. So if somebody does gain access to the storage on this device, they could possibly see everything you faxed. They could see everything you've printed if this device is storing that information. And you never know what these devices are storing because they're proprietary. They have their own operating systems or their own way of doing things within an operating system on these devices. So you run into a little bit of a challenge from a security perspective. Let's see what possible answers would be. We'll start at the bottom, work our way up. 1% said the printed output can be gathered using electromagnetic radiation. This is actually a real thing. It's actually a real technology where people have stayed on the other side of a wall, and by using radio receivers and other types of scanners on the other side of the wall, they can interpret what the printer is doing. Same thing with keyboards, same thing with monitors. It's remarkable. So when you look at the possible answers here, electromagnetic radiation could be a possible answer here. But the question was, which of these would be the most significant security concern? People using electromagnetic radiation to gather information is very unlikely. It's remarkably unlikely. So that's one where probably not the most significant security concern. 10% said printed information can be gathered with a remote receiver. Again, probably not a thing that can happen. We've got 13% that said the printer is integrated into the local Active Directory network. This is actually a good thing. This is one where we do want it to be integrated into the local Active Directory network so we can set up authentication and any security that may be associated with it. So that's actually a good thing to have, not the answer we were looking for. Certainly not a security concern. The printer can be accessed over a wireless network. Where'd that come from? I don't know. I didn't say anything in the question about wireless networks. We just sort of guessed on that one. And it brings up a good point about these answers and the questions that you get on the exam. The question and the answer will be very specific. They're not going to give you information in the answers that weren't part of the question. Each question should be its own little world and be able to see what's happening there. And some multifunction devices don't have wireless connectivity. The one that I have used recently had no wireless connectivity on it. You plug it into a wired Ethernet connection. And I didn't say anything about wireless in the question, so that particular answer isn't valid. In fact, I've just decided that the printer cannot be accessed over a wireless network. It doesn't have wireless capabilities, but that wasn't part of the question. I just made that one up too. So the way I made that one up was the same way that you thought it had wireless on it, I guess. That's one that doesn't exist. So don't read more into the questions than what is there. The answer in this particular case, the one that is the most significant security concern, is A. The print and fax information is stored locally in the multifunction device. Now, there may be more significant security concerns that you could think of associated with these multifunction devices, but that wasn't the question. The question said, which of these would be the most significant security concern? Very often in these questions, they will give you answers that are the second or third most popular security concern that you could think of. So make sure that you go through and really look at the answers, get rid of the answers that have nothing to do with what you're looking at, and make sure that you go through and read those questions very carefully so that you understand exactly what would be expected of you. So for those of you wondering, it would indeed be A, print and fax information is stored locally on the multifunction device. 45% of you got that one right. Pretty close to the one that I was shooting for. Let's do another question. I've got one available for you. We're going to shift gears a little bit, and we're going to talk about cowboys. The question is, which of the following best describes CHAP? Which of the following best describes CHAP? C-H-A-P. I think that's how you say it. The possible answers are it sends the username and password in the clear. Or B, it allows users to authenticate using third-party credentials. Or C, it provides SSO functionality. Or D, it uses a challenge message during the authentication process. Or E, it requires an accurate clock on both the client and the server. So that is one of those best describes CHAP. In fact, which of the following best describes CHAP? There might be something that could describe CHAP better. That's not one of your options. You have to choose from A through E to determine what those might be. If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA, and you'll be able to tell me what you think, which of these best describes CHAP. CHAP. It's not chapstick. It's not chaps for those of you that are riding your horses. Not one of those. This is something completely different. Of course, on the exam, they may throw out a definition like this, but notice I'm not asking you what the definition means. This is very common on this exam, is that they will use these definitions, but you'll use them to make you understand how they are applied with this technology. It's not one where they're asking you, what do the initials CHAP mean? They're not going to ask you that. They will never ask you that. They're going to ask you, how do you use it? How is it implemented? How is it most commonly seen? Which of these best describe this particular technology? That's the one you're looking for. That's the one you want to know. So hopefully you've been able to answer. A number of you already have. So let's see how we did with this one. We have kind of one that's way in the lead here. So most of you, 77% of you, a majority of you, said that D, it uses a challenge message during the authentication process. We've got a bit of a tie for second between A and B, which is sending the username and password in the clear and allowing users to authenticate using third-party credentials. And then we've got a tie for third, which is C, provides SSO functionality, and E, requires an accurate clock on both the client and the server. So which ones would this be to be able to work through this? Let's look at how CHAP works. CHAP is an authentication protocol. And I'll tell you more about the CH and the authentication protocol in a moment. So here's a scenario where we've got a client that's trying to log in. That would be me, James, and using my normal password that I use for everything, password 111. And I'm going to talk to a server. I'm going to authenticate to this CHAP server, and I'm going to send that information. The CHAP server knows of my username and password. It has stored somewhere that information and having those there. So I send a message to that server saying, hey, I'd like to gain access to this particular resource. My username is James. And the CHAP server takes my password. It understands that, okay, I'm going to be expecting a certain password. I'm going to create a challenge to this password. I'm going to add to this password a particular challenge, and I'm going to send it off. And it sends just the challenge information to me. So I don't know what that challenge information has to do with anything. It's just a blob of information. It's just a bunch of information that it's sending to me. And I'm going to combine that challenge information with my password. At the same time, the server is also combining that challenge information with my password because it already knows what my password is. And I calculate from that a challenge response, and I send back to the server, okay, I got your challenge, I combined it with my password, and here I'm sending you a response. The CHAP server looks at what it calculated as the expected response, and if those match, then now I gain access to the network, just as they did in this particular case. So we're able to do this without ever sending the password across the network. We're simply running a particular algorithm that combines the password and a challenge and just sending the challenge information across the network, which is a great way to do it if you're trying to keep things secure. That way, if somebody was to capture this information, they would only see the challenge information, which of course is not going to be able to be used again. Of course, all of this is probably worthless because I used a horrible password like password 111, which you would probably be able to figure out eventually if there was no brute force. I really don't use password 111 anywhere. So if we look at the possible answers here, we'll start again from the lowest and go up to the highest. Requires an accurate clock on both the client and the server. In the case of CHAP, it does not. You may have been thinking about Kerberos, which does require an accurate clock on both the client and the server. It has to be able to be matched up. They have to be very close to each other so that Kerberos will work. CHAP, though, doesn't care what the clocks are set to on the machines. Does it provide SSO functionality? In and of itself, CHAP does not. There's no SSO. You have to re-authenticate to all of the services based on those pieces that are there. So that would not be the right answer either. Does it send the username and password in the clear? As we've seen, it might send the username in the clear, but it does not send the password in the clear. It uses that challenge response, which is the CH in CHAP, the challenge response authentication protocol. And then you've got 12% that said allows users to authenticate using third-party credentials. CHAP may allow that functionality, but it's not part of CHAP. That doesn't best describe CHAP. It's not built into CHAP, having the third-party credentiality. So the only one really left, and it's the one that 75% of you said was correct, uses a challenge message during the authentication process. 75% said that. Should be absolutely right. I'm pulling all of these, by the way, from the SY0501 exam, although this particular topic is on both the 401 and the 501. But at the bottom of every one of these slides, you'll see the particular reference. This comes from section 4.2. PAP CHAP and MS CHAP is the name of the video where this particular information is contained. So you'll be able to go through and look at the information you have there to see exactly what you may be able to do with it. Well, as you can see, there's tons of information in the Security Plus exam. You have to know all these authentication protocols. You have to understand everything about the encryptions that are there. You have to understand the details about risk management and all the management things. You have to be able to respond to events. Those are significant problems that you need to know about. And it's important that you know these for the exam. And that's why I've gone through every single one of my videos and I've created notes. Everything that you see on the screen are in these notes. So these are my SY0501 course notes. If you are planning to take the SY0401, there are course notes for the SY0401 as well. This has everything that you would need after you've watched the videos, you've read your book, you've done some QA, and you just need that last bit of study from your notes before you walk into this exam. This would be a great thing to have. I've got my course notes up here on the screen. Let's see if I can show them to you. Here they are. So it's a PDF that you can download immediately. It's 93 pages long. It's a big one. So I really did put in everything, every bit of text, every graphic that you would get on the exam. They're all here. So it's another thing that I did for those of you interested in this. There we go. I've got physical versions too. So if you're someone who prefers a book version, it is a full color, detailed book. I'm trying to find one that's got some of the colors in it so you can see some of this. A little difficult to see with all the lights that are in here. They burn everything out. Maybe if I felt it back here. No good. Not good at all. Nothing. How about way back here? How about now? Can you see it all right? There's a lot in here. It literally took weeks to compile all of this once it was ready to go. So very detailed. So you can either get the PDF version or the perfect bound, they call it, because it's a nice bound copy. This is not spiral binding we're doing, people. This is some legit stuff. So it costs a little more for the printed version, but if you get the printed version, I give you the digital version for free. We just throw that in. That's the least that I could do. And the price is pretty good too, $20. You get the digital version, and I think it's another 15 or 17 for the printed. It costs a lot of money to print things. But I effectively just kind of pass that one through to you so that you can have access to the information. So if you want to know more about that, you can go to professormesser.com/securitycn. That would be the place to go. Let's do some more questions. Oh, by the way, for those of you that have gotten the course notes, thank you so much. It really does go a long way. We've got hosting costs. We've got the things that we need to set up in the studio. And we've got ongoing types of certification exams we're trying to create. So this is pretty important stuff to have these things here. So thank you so much to have all of those available. And as I mentioned, these are for both the 401 and the 501 exam. And of course, I have on my website the playlists. The index is available for both the 401 exam and the 501 exam. So it doesn't matter which one you're taking. I've got a video course available for you there as well. So have a look at those. That might be something to help you with. Let's do another question. That might be something to help you with as well. Let's get some questions going here. The question is, you've taken a full backup of your system on Monday, and you've performed differential backups on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. What would be required to run a full recovery on Friday? And if you think you know the answer, you go to professormesser.com/QA, because I have some potential answers there. Fortunately, this is a multiple choice. So what would be required to run a full recovery on Friday? Would it be A, Thursday's backup? Would it be B, Monday's backup and Thursday's backup? Would it be C, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday's backup? Would it be D, Monday's backup? Or would it be E, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday's backup? One of those would be what would be required to do a full recovery on Friday. So the question was, you've taken a full backup of your system on Monday and performed differential backups on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. What would be required to run a full recovery on Friday? Maybe you know these to be able to get to those, and you can have a look. Some people in the chat room wondering where you would find all these videos for the 401 and the 501. The best place is at professormesser.com. There's pull-down links right at the top for A+, Network+, Security+. There's some Cisco stuff. There's some Microsoft stuff. There's all kinds of things on the website. So if you're looking for a specific certification, that's your best place to go. And if you watch them from my website, you also get transcripts at the bottom of every video. So that'd be a good way to do that as well. So in fact, that's the best way to do that. And they're all in order. You can't miss anything if you go to the website. So let's talk about backups. I'm going to take a sneak peek here while you folks are doing that, just so we can see what these differences might be with these answers that are coming in. Maybe that's something you've worked with. So a number of you have answered this one already. Let's see how we did. How do we do? Well, we've got a little bit here and there. So make sure you have a look at these. You've got 49% said, 50% said Monday's backup and Thursday's backup. Maybe that would be a good way to look at that. You've also got 32% of you that said Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So 32%, a third of you have said, no, you need all of them to have that there. 9% said Thursday's backup. That's all you need. 5% said Monday's backup. That's all you need. And 3% said Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday's backup. So the real key here in this question was a differential backup. Differential. That's the one. There's different ways to back up data. There's incremental, a very common way to do it, and there's differential, which is another common way to do it. And of course, you could do full backups every day, which are neither incremental or differential. They're just full backups every day, but it takes so long to perform a full backup. You probably don't have all of your data changing every day. It would make sense to choose one of these. So let's look at what a differential backup really does. So let's say on Monday, we take a full backup. Just as we said in this particular question, we've run an entire full backup. We've backed up everything on Monday. But of course, we have things that will change since the backup was done. So all day Tuesday, people are in the office, they're working, they're changing files, they're updating that spreadsheet. So at the end of Tuesday, you want to perform a differential backup. This is what is different between the full backup, the last full backup you took, which in this case was yesterday, it was Monday. So what has changed? What is different between that full backup and today? And we need to be sure we back up that information. So of course, on Wednesday, everyone comes in and keeps working and changes more spreadsheets and updates more presentations. And on Wednesday, we take another backup. This backup that we do on Wednesday is going to be everything that was not backed up to the point on Monday. It was everything since the full backup was done on Monday. So we're sort of repeating what we did on Tuesday, plus everything that's changed since Tuesday. So we're rebacking up everything from Monday. So we kind of have a new, fresh differential backup on Wednesday. Well, of course, on Thursday, people will come into the office. They'll change spreadsheets. They'll update their presentations. And we've got more things that have changed. So your backup, your differential backup will be getting a little bit bigger every day. And again, this is the backup that has happened since the last full backup. So of course, at this point, the backup on Tuesday and Wednesday aren't really used for anything. We've got our latest and greatest on Thursday of all the changes that have occurred since we took the last full backup. That is our difference. That's the differential in this particular scenario. So let's say now that we need to restore everything To be able to do that, we need to get our last full backup, and then we need to get the last difference of the full backup, which will be on Thursday. On Friday, we want to be able to take everything that was backed up on Monday with the full backup, and we'll take yesterday's or Thursday's differential backup, combine those together, and now you have the backup of everything as it was at the end of our backup process on Thursday. That is a differential backup. And in the videos that I've got available, I step through other types of backups. We'll do incremental in just a moment. Let's talk about how we did with this one. So 51% of you, and I do try to hit that 50% mark. I want half of you to get these right, and I kind of want half of you to get these wrong. I want this to be a new thing you're learning. So it'd be boring if everybody got 100% of these right. And it's something now that you know, now you're ready for the exam. So Monday's backup and Thursday's backup, answer B is the correct answer. 51% of you, we were able to grab the Monday's backup and the Thursday's backup, and now that's our recovery for this particular problem. 32% of you said Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday's backup. Not the case for a differential backup, and that's our key word in this particular example is differential. Monday's backup would only give us what happened on Monday. Thursday's backup, in this particular case, would only give us the difference from what happened, or really what happened on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. It would leave out Monday completely. And only 2% said Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday's backup, which really wouldn't have very much in it either, or really redundant information for those. So that's the one wherever you're looking through all of these and trying to figure those pieces out. That would be the way it works. Now, 32% of you said Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So what kind of backup was that we were talking about? Well, you're probably thinking about an incremental backup. So here's the same scenario. You have a backup that's ready to go. You take a full backup on Monday. So far, everything's exactly the way it was with the differential. On Tuesday, we're going to take an incremental backup. In fact, this is exactly what we did when we were looking at the differential backup. In fact, we're backing up the same information on Tuesday as we did with the previous example. And people come in on Wednesday and they update their spreadsheets and they change their presentations. But instead of backing up everything since the full backup, let's just back up everything since Tuesday. Why would we have to back up everything since Tuesday? We'll just back up what changed on Wednesday. So what incrementally changed since the last type of update we backed up? So people come in on Thursday. Thursday's a busy day, by the way. Everybody's getting ready for the weekend. There's a lot of spreadsheets changing. There's a lot of presentations that are changing. And on Thursday, a lot changed. So we take an incremental update of what changed on Thursday at the end of the day. So now we've got these 4 different backups, all containing completely different information. So how would we restore them? Well, we stick them all back together. So we take the full backup and then each incremental backup throughout the week. And we put them all together, and then we finally have a good backup of what we were looking for. Now, there may be some files that were changed on Tuesday that were also changed on Thursday. So the backup takes them one day at a time. So by the time you get to the end, it takes the last one, updates that one, and then finally has everything available there. What a bad Friday someone was having. They had to do 2 restores on Friday. One was differential, one was incremental. So keep those 2 different types of backup systems in your head so that you're figuring these out and you know what the differences are between a differential backup and an incremental backup. Pretty important to really be able to do that. So that's important to have that there. It would not have been better actually in this example to put Wednesday's backup a little higher than Tuesday's, because on Wednesday, half the office was out at a meeting. Hardly anybody updated anything on Wednesday because the Wednesday's backup doesn't and could contain nothing that was backed up in Tuesday. Maybe it's a completely different set of files that were changed on Wednesday. So wasn't much done in the office. These are 2 very different backups containing different information, a little bit different than the differential, which would get bigger every day. It's intentionally smaller in this case, so you can understand that those are very, very different, how they're working. So make sure you keep that in mind when you're working through differential and incremental in your mind and having those there. And hopefully you'll never have to restore either of them. That's the thing you never want to be able to do. For a differential, again, B was absolutely the correct answer. Monday's backup and Thursday's backup is what you would need for a differential backup and having those there. If you're watching this presentation, this study group, and you'd like to get continuing education unit credit, maybe you already have your Network Plus certification, you already have your Security Plus certification, you already have an A Plus certification, or you have another type of certification that needs CEUs, then you can get a CEU from me. Now, if you don't have your Security Plus or any of these others, you won't need a CEU. So you can certainly request one, but there's nothing that you can do with it once I provide it to you. Did that make any sense? Probably not. But if you do need CEUs, here is the process you must follow to be able to earn 1 hour of webinar categoried CEU for this event. At the top or the bottom of my website is a Contact Us link. You want to click that Contact Us link. And in there, it's going to ask for your name. It's going to ask for your email address. Make sure those are correct because those go on the certification. And you want to put somewhere in there that this is the February 2018 study group for Security Plus. And the code word you want to use is differential. That is the code word we're looking for. Put all of that into that note, click that form. It will send me an email. You can put anything else in there you'd like as well. They all come to me. So if there's anything else you want to write in there, any notes you'd like to make to me, you're more than welcome to do that. And send them on to me. You don't have to remember anything but going to the Contact Us link at the top or the bottom of the website and putting in that information. And then in about a week or so, plus or minus, it takes me a while to get through all of these, I will send you back an email that has been digitally signed by me that says you must have watched this and here's your 1 hour of CEUs. If you don't know what a CEU is, you can go to the CompTIA website into the renewals for the continuing education unit and learn all about CEUs, which will take you about half a day, quite honestly. It's not an easy topic. Hopefully you'll be able to maneuver around the website and figure out what's going on there. So you won't have to take your exam again. You can simply watch some webinars, and at least that'll help. These webinar-based CEUs are basically there. You have a limited number. For Security Plus, you can accumulate 10 in a 3-year period. For Network Plus, I think it's 6, and for A Plus, I think it's 4, something like that. So you have to do different types of things to be able to renew your certification. You can't watch 60 hours of these study groups. As much as I'd like you to be able to renew your certification, you have to do different things. So just something to keep in mind. I've got another question here. I've got a question about encryption. I get a lot of questions about encryption to be able to do that. So make sure that you know your encryption. So I've got some encrypted information on the screen here, and I'm asking you specifically, this will be hard for the people that are listening on the podcast, I apologize, but I've got a graphic here that will take you through a comparison of encrypted information that I want you to be able to see. So the first thing that you're going to see on the screen is I'm just going to type in hello world, and you can see the hello world that's there, and then I'm going to encrypt that. In this particular case, you can see I'm encrypting it with PGP. And it's actually hello, comma, world, period. Now I do it again, except the other information that I'm going to encrypt is hello, comma, world, exclamation mark. That's really the only difference between those two. And I encrypt it again with PGP. So I've really gone through an encryption process twice. And you can see that I've used 2 pieces of information to encrypt hello, world and hello, world. I guess that'd be the way you would describe those. And you can see the encryption of that is on the screen. So what does that demonstrate? And of course, you'd have to be looking at the screen to understand what that demonstrates. Now, fortunately, I have some options available for you to be able to understand what this is. It's a multiple choice question. Is it A, confusion, B, obfuscation, C, security through obscurity, D, hashing, or E, diffusion? So you've got a choice there of what this might be. Is it confusion, obfuscation, security through obscurity, hashing, or diffusion? One of those would be the right answer. And it's really, this particular case, there's not even a lot of wiggle room on this one. There's a very specific answer we're looking for this one. Between those, if you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA. This is a topic that is covered, I think, on both exams, but it certainly is very specifically spelled out in the 501 exam. So that would be what you would do for this question. Maybe you've worked a little bit with these encryptions. If you haven't done any encryption at all, whether it's PGP or any other type of encryption, make sure you do some of that. Get some hands-on, In fact, if you want some practice, you can send me a message. If you want to encrypt something with PGP, my PGP key is out on the public key servers. My email address, james@professormesser.com. You can easily find that. And you can send me an encrypted message and see if I can read it. That would be one way to test your encryption. That way you're ready for the exam. So if you're trying to figure out what key do I use, how does this work, there's no better thing that you can do than to actually do it yourself. Get some hands-on with this content to be able to do it. So let's see how we did with this particular answer. I haven't even looked yet. Well, 58% of you have said hashing. Excuse me, I needed a warm beverage there. 59% of you have said hashing. 16% have said obfuscation. 6% have said, 15% have said diffusion. That would really be in third place. In fourth place, 6% have said security through obscurity, and 4% said confusion. One of those. So it's 59% said hashing, 17% said obfuscation, 15% said diffusion, 6% security through obscurity, and 4% said confusion. Now, one of the things you'll notice on here that's very interesting about this is a PGP encryption. So this is one where we are encrypting information. This is what the encrypted PGP data looks like. All I encrypted was the words hello world with a period on the end, and it really gave me a bunch of garbage there. But that's what PGP looks like. And PGP is very convenient that it's all these ASCII characters. It's very easy to email to someone. It was designed this way so that you can encrypt it. If it was real words, you'd be able to read it, but it's just A's and E's and B's and C's and 6's and 5's and things you can read that are on there. It's a benefit of having this ASCII information. You also can see that the hello world with the exclamation mark is also encrypted exactly the same way as PGP. The important thing to notice in these, you do have to look pretty close, is that it's very different between these two. There's a whole paragraph of letters and numbers, a huge jumble of letters and numbers for both of these, but they're very, very, very different. The only thing that's really the same, notice there is a little bit of information at the beginning of these, a block of letters, maybe 12, 14, 15, 16 letters that are exactly the same between both of these. There's a PGP header that's stuck at the beginning, but then everything after that's completely different. That's the important thing that you needed to take away from this, is that even though I only changed the exclamation mark, the period to an exclamation mark, that was the only thing I changed there. That was quite a difference between those two. It wasn't like it changed a little bit. It changed completely between those two things. That is an important quality of encryption. Whenever you change one particular thing, same way with hashing. If you did this with hashing, it's the same type of scenario. You change one thing and the output changes dramatically so that you'd have really no relationship between the two. We do hello world, we get this big section. We do hello world with the exclamation mark, and it's completely different. And as you can see, I've highlighted here, that's the only part that's the same. There's a PGP header there that has the key information of who this was encrypted for. So when the person receives this, they'd be able to see this. So it really is quite a bit that's different just by changing the period to an exclamation mark. Everything that's not yellow is completely different between the two. What a difference in encrypting these two things together. And that's diffusion. That's the technique. That's the meaning of that dramatic change. It is diffused between those two. If you had an encryption algorithm that only changed this a little bit by changing the period to an exclamation mark, you'd be able to gather examples of things that only changed a little bit, and you'd be able to break down exactly how this encryption worked and perhaps be able to decrypt information without having the key. That's why it's important on these encryption algorithms that you're able to really get some big differences by just changing one single character that you happen to be encrypting. So we had 60% of you now that said hashing, but this is PGP. It's pretty good encryption. In fact, the question itself said we were encrypting, and hashing is not encryption. Hashing is creating a message digest based on an original piece of text. PGP is not a hashing type of algorithm. It's an encryption method. So you can see here PGP is absolutely encryption. So unfortunately, hashing would not be the right answer here. We had 15% that said obfuscation, which means that we were simply hiding information, but in this case, we really weren't hiding. We really were encrypting. We would not be able to break those out and see them that way. Would not be security through obscurity either. Boy, PGP is anything but security through obscurity. Security through obscurity means that if you know the process that was used to create the encryption, you would be able to pull it back to be able to find the original plain text without actually having the key. In a really good encryption mechanism, the key should be the only thing that nobody knows. In fact, PGP is a really good example of this. PGP and the code to create PGP, the encryption part of it, is out there as open source software. So you'd be able to read through exactly the process that it uses to encrypt this. And even knowing that, people are not able to decrypt something that has been encrypted with PGP. Just not possible unless you have the key. That's the important part. And confusion would not be confusion in this particular case. Really looking for diffusion. That was the one we were hoping to find in this particular list. And that is the one that you do have to know for the exam. In fact, you can see here this comes directly from the SY0501 exam under 6.1 cryptography concepts. A lot of the cryptography fundamentals, the foundation of what you need for cryptography, is pretty well laid out in the SY0401. I'd say it's laid out a little bit better in the 501 than it is for the 401. That's what I really was trying to say. 501 really lays them out quite nicely. So hopefully that's one you were able to recognize. Unfortunately, only 14% of us got that one right. I think I know what my rewind question is going to be for next month, and see if people are able to remember what that particular question had to do with anything. Hopefully you'll be able to remember that for your exam, which is really the most important part. All of these questions, all of this content, everything that's here is in the course exam objectives. Make sure that you go out to CompTIA and get a copy of these exam objectives. They have everything in there. In fact, people were talking on Reddit today about, I found something in one book that was different than what is in this other book that is different than what Professor Messer says. So which one is right? Well, we might be all wrong. The only place that would really tell you the details or orders or set of information that you definitely need to know for the exam is CompTIA themselves. In all cases, go back to the exam objectives, which is really what I did. I take, for all of my videos, for all of my course notes, for everything I do, they all start with these exam objectives. I go step by step. I go through and I put a line through each one of them as I go. So when you look at my videos, you know they're coming directly from these exam objectives, and they're a great checklist. They have everything in there you need to know. So things like confusion and diffusion and obfuscation and security through obscurity and hashing, all of those are listed in the exam objectives. Make sure that you go through and you know exactly what those things are going to be. We have one of these study groups every month. We did one last month, and we're going to do one next month as well on March the 21st. Stop in again. We're going to do another Security Plus study group. Now, if it's past March the 21st, you're watching this on a replay, and you'd like to know when the next live event's going to be, you can, of course, go to professormesser.com/calendar. I list out my A Plus study group, my Network Plus study group, my Security Plus study group, or anything else that might come up. I'm thinking of some new ideas of things that we can do. So these study groups do have different content on it that we can go through, and I might want to do one that's not a study group. I'll put it in the calendar. You'll be able to see all of those and have all of that information there. It's a great place to go to find information at professormesser.com/calendar. Can you believe we've gone through an hour of Q&A? I kind of talked a lot for the answers on these, but they were detailed, complex types of topics this month. Hopefully it's been something that you've been able to step through as well. You can, of course, find my course notes on my website, professormesser.com/securitycn. Don't forget to smash that button on YouTube. Follow me at professormesser.com/YouTube. I forgot to bring in, YouTube just sent me my silver play button. They send it to you when you get to 100,000 subscribers. And now that I'm past 200,000 subscribers, they finally sent it. It took a year. They sent it to me. I've got it yesterday. I should have brought it in. I'll send an Instagram on that later today. Follow me on Twitter, professormesser.com/Twitter, professormesser.com/Facebook. And of course, by the way, if you're going to take your exam, you're not a student with an EDU email account, then you're going to need some kind of discount. If you do have an EDU email address, make sure you go to the academic store at CompTIA, because you'll get about a 50% discount. But for the rest of us out here that don't have an EDU email account, you can find a voucher discount at professormesser.com/vouchers. We didn't have time to go through the Security Plus labs from GTS Learning, but those are pretty awesome. And if you follow this link, you get a pretty significant discount. You don't have to put in any discount code or anything. Just follow this link, professormesser.com/seclabs, and you'll be able to get a lot of detail about the Security Plus labs that GTS Learning offers, which are great. I use those too, and being able to work through those. It's pretty nice to go through, and maybe we'll have some time next time to go through all of those. And thanks to you. Thanks for being here and doing the Q&A. Stick around for the next hour. I'm going to open up the phone lines. We'll have some live calls coming in. I'll take questions from the chat room and who knows what else. But thanks for joining us this time. We'll see you next time on the Security Plus Study Group. Yeah, .mil email does not work either. So much for that. Have those there. I have phone lines I need to open up, so let's get that going. Yeah, it's the EDU email. You go to the CompTIA Academic Store if you have an EDU email address, and that's where they give you those nice discounts. Let me bring up my information here. There's really no one here to do this but me. So you don't see there's not a crowd. I don't have a group of people like these nice radio shows have. Instead, I have to click things myself to bring up the phone lines. So let's host a show. Let's start the show. And now let me call in to my show itself. We're going to call in right here. I'm going to click a button. Is it going to be loud? I don't think so. I think it has to go through this little view.
Thank you for calling.
Well, you're welcome. I'm going to type some things in. Here, what do I type in? I type in some numbers, and then I press this thing here.
Enter your 6-digit PIN number.
Well, that's redundant. And I put this in, and I type this, and it goes here.
Welcome.
Welcome. Yes, the production crew must be in the next room. They must be in the second part of the studio that doesn't exist back there. If you'd like to call me, you're more than welcome to. You can ask questions in the chat room. You can call in directly. In the continental United States, the toll-free number 855-785-RJ45. If you're calling in through Skype, you can call in absolutely free from anywhere in the world using a plus one at the beginning of that, +1 855-785-7545. That's what that RJ45 is, 7545. So in the chat room, can you take the 501 without taking the 401 exam? Yes. In fact, you'll probably want to. You only need one of them. You need to pick one right now. So if you're thinking, I'm never going to make it till July, or I don't want to take the 401, I want to take the 501. Some people feel they really should take the latest exam, and I guess you can do that. There's now a lot of good content out for the 501 exam. Just pretend the 401 doesn't even exist. Just take the 501, you pass it, and you've got your Security Plus certification. If you've already been studying for your 401, take your 401, pass your 401, you're also Security Plus certified, and you won't have to take your 501. So you only have to take one to have that there. Is there a good place to find different hashing examples? Well, I have a video on hashing. That would be a good place to go. Professor Messer, go to hashing and then put /professormesser.com. There's your Google tip of the day. / means that you specify what site you would like to search on. Whenever I'm searching for Microsoft things from the knowledge base, I always put /Microsoft.com, and that way I get rid of a lot of the crazy nonsense that's out there on the internet. So that's a good way to do it. And I give some good hashing examples there. And I talk about in my 501, I talk about the difference in hashing. I talk about digital signatures and how digital signatures are an encrypted hash. Pretty interesting. And of course, if you're sending me a CE request, I am, of course, going to be digitally signing all of those. So you get an example of what that might be. But I've got some good hashing examples, I think, in the latest set of videos, in the 501 videos. That's one of the things that the 501 videos, every time I do a new set, I really say that set's the best one. Because I really get to add on and adjust based on the content that I get. So a lot of the 401 content, the 501 content is very different. There must be 50% of the content's completely different. A lot of new content. So that's one that's pretty different on the exam. But whenever I start looking at all the different things, I get a chance to update. And the hashing section, I was able to update quite a bit. And the digital signatures and the encryption section itself, I put a lot of time into and updated, a lot more graphics, a lot of animation, things that can help a little bit with this. Let's go to the phone lines. We've got the 862 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hello. Hey, this is Alan. I'm calling from. Hello.
Hi, Alan.
Hey. Yeah, I'm calling from. I'm here in Bluefield, New Jersey.
Nice.
So I'm actually going in because I got my A+ cert, and I've been really thinking about going for my security. I'm actually studying and trying to get my Security+. Do you find that it's more essential to get the Network+ cert before getting the Security+? And also, what roles have you seen any roles or positions that people have filled once they get the Security+? Even it is, from what I see, it's a very entry level certification, and I definitely want to step into start getting into cybersecurity. I've been doing desktop support for about 3 years or so,
Gotcha.
That's really it.
It's an interesting set of questions. So let's attack the first question first, because I am a poster boy for doing things backwards. Whenever I got my CompTIA certifications, I got my Security+ first, then I got my Network+, then I got my A+. So if CompTIA will tell you, we should really do those in the opposite order. They recommend you do the A+ first, then the Network+, then the Security+. But the reality is there's not a ton of overlap between these different exams. There's a little bit. There's quite honestly a little bit of networking in Security+. There's a little bit of Security and Network+. You'll see quite a bit of those types of things in there. But none of them have a formal requirement. There's no formal prerequisite that requires you to have a Network+ before you take the Security+. It's really up to what your personal objectives are, what your career goals are, and what you're trying to accomplish. And I do have a lot of people coming to my site that are trying to get jobs with the U.S. federal government, and Security+ is the entry level of certifications you must have for doing work for the Department of Defense and other parts of the federal government. So a lot of people come to my site and they're starting with Security+ after having functionally no IT experience whatsoever. And I think as long as you are able to put your nose to the grindstone, really study, really understand what's expected on this exam, and get the material down, I think you'll do fine. It's not one that requires that you have an immense amount of experience to be able to pass it. It would help, but it's not a huge requirement to do that. So yes, it is possible for you to get your Security+ without having to go through the others. Is it helpful to know more about networking before you go into security? Yeah, it is. And speaking from a practical perspective, your question about getting a job in security, there's a couple of different ways to look at this. Quite honestly, the security market is one, there's just not enough people for the number of jobs in the security market right now. There's a lot of open recs and not a lot of people to fill them. And Security+ will help. But let me tell you how the security market has gone from a career perspective. And I'm speaking as someone who goes back now well over 10 years when I was working in the security role. So I worked for McAfee, what at the time was Network Associates. I worked with their antivirus and firewall and IPS products. I worked with Palo Alto Networks as a systems engineer there, and did firewall implementations of next generation firewalls and how to design those into some of the biggest networks in the world. And I got to go from place to place to place to place and talk to the security teams at these enormous organizations. So if you're drinking a soft drink right now, I got a chance to talk to the security people that are making that soft drink. So these are big companies with big security concerns and significant number of people working in security. And almost all of them at the time, and we're talking about sort of as this groundswell was beginning, what we did is we grabbed everybody who was a network professional and we moved them up into the security world. Because a lot of security, especially information technology security, those departments have a huge networking component. You're connecting to another site and setting up an IPsec tunnel. There's an enormous amount of IP subnetting involved there. You have to understand the wide area network protocols. You have to understand how to configure routers. You have to then design the communication between firewalls for the IPsec tunnel. And then you have to be able to set up all of the routing to get information in and out of that tunnel between the two organizations. If you're setting up someone who's doing a client site VPN. They're in a hotel and they're connecting to you over a VPN. That's a completely different VPN configuration. It probably is using a completely different VPN concentrator. There is a different set of networking challenges associated. What if you were implementing a new set of firewalls? Well, how do you implement them into the fault tolerant, high availability configuration that you currently have for your routers? What about redundancy across the internet? There's all these protocols and IP addresses you have to worry about when you're trying to implement and design those types of security systems. So there's a huge need to have a networking foundation if you're getting into that particular role of security. It will help you a lot. But as I've said, there are a lot of people that need security professionals today. There are open recs, and what a lot of organizations have started to do is to pull in people at an entry level because they've already pulled all the networking people. We've already grabbed all the networking folks and pulled them in. Now we're going to start pulling in entry-level security. So there are people getting security entry-level positions today. There's not a ton of them. The normal path would have you going into IT, very similar to the path I took. I started at help desk, moved up into desktop management, moved into network management, moved into security. And that was a long arc, but that's what I took to get there. I think the more knowledge and information you know about networking, the more attractive it will be for people that are hiring on the security side for things like IT security. Now, there's so many different security roles. I'm really talking very specifically about IT security, or what they're calling today cybersecurity in the IT world. But of course, there's people that are doing external services. There are people doing outsourced security. There are people doing very specific penetration testing security. Those are different roles and different jobs completely than what most people have in security, which is the IT security role in the security team within these large organizations. That's the one that will give you the best possible entry level when you're trying to get there. So it's going to also depend on what the managing hiring person there in the security team is looking for and what they're trying to fill. They may not want any entry-level people. They don't have time for that. Or they need warm bodies. We're going to bring someone in who is somewhat familiar with these technologies, and we're going to train them. And they're going to be the next great security professional that we brought in entry level. Those jobs are out there. They're hard to find, but they are out there, and you should absolutely look around for them. So that was sort of a long answer to those two questions, but hopefully that gave you some perspective. Did that help, Alan?
Yeah, it does. And it's one of those things that, a lot of people I know go for like a CCNA plus along with the Security Plus, kind of get into that network security realm, like you said. But I'm really looking. I'm looking to possibly. It's like you said, security is just so vast in general. So I'm just trying to figure out which exact field I want to get into. But I think Security Plus will be a good stepping stone for me, and it'll kind of help me map out which field I want to get into, niche. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for calling, Alan.
Thanks.
That's one that's part of it. What you do and what you know, and when you show up to the interview is part of it. I'm going to talk about what other parts of it are in just a moment, and we'll get out there. Talk about those. Let's go to the next call. 661 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name? Where are you calling from?
My name is Steve, and I am calling from Tennessee.
Hello, Steve. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
I have a overall general question pertaining to your recommendations for the CompTIA exams.
All right.
I teach at a college, and one of the suggestions that I have for my students is whenever they're studying for their A+, Net+, Security+, to take practice tests until they start consistently scoring about 90% or higher, and take notes as they go along doing that. And I was looking for what would you recommend in that type of situation?
it's kind of a combination of things, because people do go through, they read all the books, they look at the videos, and then they're trying to figure out how do we bridge the gap between kind of the formal education part until we take the exam. How do we know if we're even ready to take the exam? And the first thing I tell people is use those exam objectives. That's your big checklist. You go through those exam objectives and explain to someone else what each of those things means in the context of A+ or Network Plus or Security Plus, then you're going to be just fine when you sit down and you're ready to take your exam. And I agree that Q&A is a big part of that. I tell people all the time, get as much Q&A as you can. Finding good Q&A can be a challenge, though. A lot of the stuff on the internet's kind of bad. Some of the stuff that's commercial kind of stinks too, quite honestly. There's some very shiny gold pieces out there that you can find. And when you find them, you definitely want to wrap yourself around them and go, okay, these are good questions. And I try to do the same thing and provide questions that are very similar to what you would see on your exam. But there's a gap there as well. You know, people will go through this Q&A and they'll get questions right and they'll get questions wrong. But I think one of the most important things you should do is when you get a question wrong, really figure out why you got that question wrong, or figure out if the question was just written badly. You know, as soon as you're at the point where you're able to send that question back to the author of the question and say, I don't think this one's right, here's why, you've probably mastered that particular topic. So when I tell people that they need some of that Q&A, they do. And I tell people, even on the Security Plus exam, you need some hands-on. I think that will bridge the gap. Getting the Q&A and getting the hands-on is that bridge between that formal education section and you taking the exam and passing it. And it's more of kind of a mental preparation with the Q&A, and it's more muscle memory by typing in and running some of these commands, running Nmap, and running some of these pings and trace routes so that you can really understand what's being expected of you on the exam.
Alrighty, and one last question, if that is okay.
Sure, go ahead.
The other thing that I see a few of the students doing whenever some of their fellow classmates go in for the exam and they fail it and then they come back and they get a little bit discouraged, I see them tend to overstudy sometimes. And that prolongs how much time that they have there and all of that. So what would you say should be possibly a maximum of how much study material they use, depending on the person, I guess?
That's a tough one. Everybody's a little bit different. Everybody studies differently. Everybody retains the information differently. Everybody has different experiences that they're bringing to the table when they start the studying process. So it's hard to tell anyone, here's how much you need to study. And that's why I always tell people to go back to the exam objectives. The exam objectives, and they tell you this in the exam objectives, they can go off script. CompTIA can go off script of these exam objectives if they want to. But what we found is they really don't. They really stick to the exam objectives almost completely 100%, which is great because that's the way you can go through all of these exam objectives. And I think using that idea of you explaining it to someone else, even if you're explaining it to yourself, that's fine. But if you talk through every single objective and you cross it out or you circle it or you decide you need more study, that's what's going to help you understand, am I studying too much or am I not studying enough? Another thing you have to look at, and I see this, for instance, on the Network Plus exam, is there's a small section on the Network Plus exam on subnetting. And as you're probably aware, people get all wrapped around the axle and the subnetting is a huge problem for them, and it's having to do this math and it's too much. And they will spend a week learning how to do the most fundamental subnetting. But the reality is on the Network Plus exam, you might not get any subnetting questions. You might get one, or you might get two. Was it worth spending an entire month? And the only way you would know that is if you looked at the exam objectives and you saw that they were a small section of a much bigger section of a much bigger domain of a longer list of other domains. So you have to be able to take all of those and put them in context. Is studying too much a problem? I guess it can be. We'll often kid with people that will study and they'll pass the exam and they'll get exactly the minimum number they need to pass the exam. And I'll say, well, that's good. You studied exactly the right amount of time to pass this exam. You didn't waste your time studying too much. I don't know if anybody really needs to be in that scenario, but it does help if you use the exam objectives as that checklist.
All righty. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Steve. That's one you never do know. I think once you go through a little Q&A and you start checking things off on that list, once you get 90% of that down, yeah, you're ready. Go take the exam. Why not? And having those in. And if you studied too much, now you're ready. Now you're really ready. I'd rather kill the exam and just blow it out than going through others. Let's go to the 202 area code. Are you there, caller? Where are you calling from?
Hi, my name is Fernando. I'm calling from Washington, D.C.
Hey, Fernando. What can we do for you?
So I have a couple of questions. So my girlfriend and I'm trying to get into the IT field, and I've been told that the best thing to do is start getting certification. So they told me to start with Security+, which will be the best one to try to find a job. Especially here around the area with all the
Correct.
DoD.
Yep.
But we're currently studying. But what I was also trying to do in the meantime, because I've been looking for all the ads for jobs, and they're either ask for certificates or for experience, and I have neither one. So
Right.
What I'm trying to figure out here is where should I start looking for a job, because I want to gain some experience before, taking the exam. So once I pass the exam, I can just go somewhere and say, hey, I work here, I have this experience, I also have a certificate.
It's a little bit of a challenge. It's that catch-22 that everybody wants experience, but you can't get experience unless you get the job, but they won't give you the job unless you have the experience. So there's a couple of ways that you can approach this. In some organizations, they are very specific on exactly these requirements. They are that you have to meet these requirements if we're ever even going to consider talking to you. But I will tell you, as someone who comes from working on many different organizations and doing many different job interviews, those are merely guidelines that can help us weed out a lot of the things that maybe we don't want to talk to. But if things pop up on somebody's resume, or if somebody who knows somebody drops a resume off, I'm going to look at that one a little bit more. Oh, you know this person? How do you know them? Oh, it's I know somebody we met at the Cisco user group, and they have all these things that they're doing, and it's really interesting. You should talk to them. Those are times where I'll take a meeting as well. I'll take an interview with that person as well, even if they don't meet 100% of those particular requirements. So the first thing I'll tell people is ignore those requirements. If you look at the job and you think that job's a good fit for me, put in a resume with that organization, send your papers in, fill out an application, get the process going, get into their system. They might not call you, or they might. So a lot of times, especially with security right now, there's not a lot of to choose from. We're really trying to find people right now. So if that's the case with a particular organization, and they're willing to overlook the formal requirement of you having experience, that might fit. One of the things I tell people, I was thinking about this when we were talking to Alan earlier, is that it isn't just about what people are looking for in that job description. It's not just about the experience and not just about what you've done in the past. There's things you can do to improve your odds when you walk in the door or when you hand somebody a resume. One of the things I highly recommend that people do is go be a part of your local user group. This might be a Microsoft user group. It might be a Cisco user group. It might be a Palo Alto Networks user group or a Checkpoint user group. If you're security minded, those might make sense. It might be a VMware user group. And in DC, there's a user group for everything. Become part of that organization. Go to those meetings. First, the information they have there is pretty interesting. They'll bring in people that are experts on these topics. They'll talk about a topic for a bit. You'll have some pizza, and then you can talk with the people that are at these meetings. It's a great place to meet people in the industry. And one of the things you'll find in IT is that it's a small world. The people that work in your regional area in IT will be the people you run into throughout your entire career. So it's important that you can meet them as soon as possible. And I will tell you, of the 15 or so jobs that I've had in IT throughout the years, the first job, I didn't know anybody. I still don't know how I got that job. They were looking for grunt work, and I was willing to do it, and they hired me. But every other job I got after that, I knew somebody who worked there. And that was a good example of me either walking into the interview and say, oh yeah, I know this guy in IT. We've worked together a lot. I knew him from when I was delivering cables back at this other job. We'd see him all the time. Or it's somebody that I knew from a user group, or I knew from this particular example, or it was a family member. People want to hire people they can trust. They have at the most basic level, are you going to get to work on time? Are you going to stay the entire time? Are you not going to come in impaired? The worst, they don't want to hire these unknowns. Not that everybody is that way, but it's fear of the unknown. And if they know you, or somebody in the organization knows you, you move up the ranks quite a bit. That helps a lot with trying to overcome some of those shortcomings you're talking about. And the other thing I'll recommend to everybody who's listening to this is set up your home lab. It is so easy now to spin up a virtual machine in your computer. Grab an old machine and build a lab. I'll give you some things you could do. Load pfSense, work with the pfSense graphical front end, and firewall your internet connection, or firewall a single computer that's on your network, and play around with pfSense, and then load up some of the intrusion prevention inside of that because it integrates nicely with Snort. Maybe you can download some the ICAR virus and see if your intrusion prevention system will stop ICAR or some other type of known vulnerability. Maybe set up your own signatures. Do some of these things that are very security ideaed, conscious ideas, and make sure that you're able, when somebody says, what else should we know about you? And you can say, well, have I told you about my home lab and some of these things that I've been doing? And you start diving into, I loaded Linux. We got a CentOS version. I loaded pfSense in that. People want to hear about these VPN things that you're doing. They want to hear about these firewall things that you're doing, because people don't tend to do these things. They don't tend to learn the practical side of this particular job. And these jobs in IT are very practical. It's important that you get a formal education for other reasons, but formal educations don't get into how to configure a switch, how to manage your firewall, how to configure your SIM to gather all of these log files into a single place and start creating reports. That is valuable skills when you walk in the door, and you have to be able to get in the door to be able to tell people about them. So it's never, like everything else, it's never any one thing. You need to be able to do all of these things to be able to get to the top of that list, to get into the door so you can have the conversation so that you can get those jobs. And I think those are two things you should definitely look at, is going to those user group meetings and setting up your own home lab.
I have another question. It'll be
Sure.
my last one, if I may.
Yeah.
So my idea was, that are related to the question I asked you about a job. I was thinking of doing this, and you can tell me if I'm wrong or I'm correct. I was thinking to, start working, in Best Buy, and start working on the floor, and maybe work my way up into like the geek squad so I can get some experience there, and then maybe just move up to a IT job, obviously after passing the Security+.
There will be people throughout your career that will tell you that you're doing the wrong thing. So I will be the first one now, because people told me throughout my career, what in the world are you doing? Why are you doing this job? My first job out of college was working, and I got a 4-year degree in business management from Florida State University. This was, I worked hard. Actually, I worked very badly, but eventually I worked hard enough to get that 5-year degree in business management. I got through it. I got the piece of paper, and I had that particular thing done, that formal degree that I worked on. But it wasn't an IT type job. It wasn't at the time what we called MIS, Management Information Systems. It wasn't an information systems degree. In fact, the idea of information systems was kind of a new concept at the time. So I got my first job was quite literally delivering printer cables, plugging in monitors that people had bought throughout Miami-Dade County. So I moved down to Miami. I would put boxes of things in the back of my car. I drive to these companies that had bought it from this little computer company in South Miami, and they wanted somebody to plug the printer in, plug the monitor in, And it upgraded from there. I was able to do some memory upgrades. I was able to put hard drives into systems. I was able to do a little bit more. Eventually, I was able to help the Novell guy install his Novell file servers on site with some of these customers. So I was able to move up that way, but it was a grunt job. It was really not a fun job. It was an interesting job, but not the funnest job. It had some advantages and disadvantages, but it was kind of grunt work, and it didn't pay very well at all. But by going to that job, I got to meet the people who were our normal customers. I met the people at this very big financial company. It's an insurance company. I walk in, it was beautiful marble on the walls. Everybody was in suit and tie. Even in the IT department, everybody was dressed nicely. And I thought, this is nice. I could just sit in a desk all day. This would be fantastic, rather than trying to drive around Miami all day, trying to deliver printer cables. And I could do some really high-tech stuff. They had tons of servers. They had tons of networking. And I thought, that's where I'd like to work. And I got to know the people there. And when a job opened up, I said, I'd be really interested in that. They go, well, we've known you for 6 months doing this. We know your capabilities. You should definitely send us a resume. Those types of things only work if you're able to go through and build those relationships beforehand. You can't rush out to LinkedIn when you lose your job. You've got to be cultivating those relationships and knowing these people before any of that happens, because they'll become friends of yours, and friends want to help you out. And that's one of the ways that people need to approach this with technology. They need to approach it really with everything, but they definitely need to approach it when you're looking at trying to find a job with technology. Maybe that's something that might help you. Take the job at Best Buy. Work at it for 6 months. Nobody's going to look at a job in technology and go, well, what a horrible job in technology. Yeah, I got some great experience, and here's what I learned. And you can tell people, I learned how to do this. I learned how to do this. You've got a machine right now that's having a problem with malware. I can wipe it right now, and we'd be up and running in 10 minutes. Those are the things an employer wants to hear. Are they the low-end entry-level jobs? Yes. That's where you start. That's how it works. Of course they are. Are you going to start at the insurance company? Maybe, hopefully, but not everybody can start at the insurance company. But definitely have a path. You're never going to stay in any job in IT forever. It doesn't work that way. You stay for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years max, and you're off to the next one. So it just kind of depends on your scenario. You're the one that gets to decide that. You're the one that sets your next goal. You're the one that has that 5 and 10 year goal in your mind. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with starting at a company like Best Buy, an enormous conglomerate with tons of technology. Why wouldn't you want to go learn what they're doing there? Hopefully,
Thank you.
Hopefully,
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for calling, Fernando. That's one of the things I don't get. People will they will poo-poo. They will tell you, what a horrible job. Yeah, it's kind of not the greatest job in the world, but I got experience. And people, they saw me delivering cables in Miami out of my junky car, out of my Mitsubishi. They're like, what a horrible job. I'm like, yeah, well, just wait. You just wait. I'm soon going to be sitting at home all day streaming videos. We didn't know what that meant back then. That would have made nonsense. How would I have known? I didn't. 484 area code. Thanks for holding for so long, everyone, including this 484 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, how are you, Professor?
Hello.
My name is Chad. I'm from Philadelphia.
Welcome. What can we do for you, Chad?
So my question for you is, and this is kind of it's kind of redundant, but at the same token, it has a little twist. So I'm 23 or so credits away from an associate's degree in computer information technologies with the security option at my school. That's what they're calling it, right?
Great.
And I don't have any certifications. I'm honing in on the Security+ as a confidence builder and, getting kicked off and something. I'm currently working in a warehouse. I'm 38 years old. Working in a warehouse is really not going to cut it for me anymore with the way my body's going. And I've been a technology enthusiast for, a long time. Really have nothing to show for it. So if I showed up at an interview, they're going to look at me like I have a propeller on the top of my head. What can I get with the education plus, say, like the track that they're providing? In the track, they have the CCNA, the Security+, the certified ethical hacker from e-council, so on and so forth. What, off the top of your head, what does that get someone like me today if I show up with some of those credentials, one or two of them, all of them? What does that mean for me?
It might mean a lot, or it might mean nothing. So here's a great waffle answer for you: is that some employers will not care about certifications. Although I will tell you, some of the Cisco certifications have the employers that generally will poo-poo certifications in general will tell you, oh, there's Cisco? Okay, maybe we can talk a little bit, even though they'll kind of still keep you at arm's length. Some employers are all about the certifications because they understand there's a practical side of this. And you've got now a formal education that you're working on, that if at the end of this, you've got a 2-year degree that has a focus in this type of practical application of these technologies that people are using in their workplace every single day, that's valuable stuff to take into your employer. Now, it's not the only thing. I mentioned earlier about making friends in the industry by going to these user group meetings, by building your own home lab. And I realize if you've got a physical job during the day, I used to work in a blueberry field, hoeing away the weeds around the blueberries. It was an agricultural, grunty job. I think everybody needs one of those, by the way, because they're very motivating. But you know, at the end of the day, you're tired. You really don't want to do much with this at all. But this is the time you got to at least build your home lab. Pick one of those projects dealing with something in security or networking or report generation or imaging systems or whatever it happens to be, because all of these things that you're learning in these certifications, people are using. They're using the wide area network technologies that are in Network Plus. They're using the re-imaging technologies that you need to get rid of some of this malware that you learn in A+. They're using these encryption mechanisms that you're learning in Security+. They're all being used. These are very practical certifications. And I'm speaking as someone who's been doing it through all of these years. These are not just things they throw in and say, here, you need to do it, especially when you get into the topics that you'll find with the EC Council's ethical hacker. Although I don't necessarily like the EC Council, I like the topics that are covered on that particular certification. It's practical knowledge of using Nmap and being able to do penetration testing and being able to handle systems once they've been compromised. Those are important skills to have. You just need some way to use those skills. So it's sort of a combination of all of those things. The practical knowledge that you're going to get, or practical degree that you're going to get. It's doing some actual hands-on, whether it's with an employer or it's something you build yourself. And it's a way just to have a technical conversation with someone once you finally get in front of them. And for you, you've at least had a job. You've proved that you can come in at the beginning of the day, stay all day, and you're very consistent in what you're doing. So a lot of employers, they understand that it's not an IT job, and they get that. But you are a responsible human being, and that goes a long way with some of these employers.
One other quick question, if I may.
Absolutely, go ahead.
Okay. So with the home lab, scored something to put PFSense on, ordered a network adapter. And as far as running the home lab and such like that, obviously that'll cost a little bit of money. But once outside of PFSense, and that looks really good, and building something I can run virtual machines from, like a Zen server. I've grown out of my own PC, so the switching and stuff like that, maybe an old Cisco router or an old Cisco switch, a managed switch for VLANs and stuff like that, I'm thinking. But outside of that, what the heck else should I do? I have all of my VMs. I am going to try to get a Linux Plus certification in all of the certification soup. What else should I be doing?
These are the right things to do. So some other projects people will work on: set up a VPN concentrator. A lot of these things that I'm mentioning, by the way, you don't need to buy equipment for those of you listening. You can do it all in a virtual machine that's running on your existing system. You'd be surprised how little resources a Linux virtual machine will take up on your computer. Or you might have an extra computer sitting around that somebody's not using. It doesn't take much to get Linux running on these very old computers. computers. So a computer that's 5 years old runs Linux quite nicely. So you can use those. Set up a VPN concentrator so that you can be outside at a coffee shop and on your phone be able to VPN into your home network. Those are great things. That's so practical. That is exactly what you're doing in an IT job, in a security role. Those are the types of things that can make a very big difference. But it's a combination of all of them. Now, you mentioned getting the degree, and you mentioned getting the certifications. I'm going to go back to these user group meetings because I'm somebody who has participated and actively know the people that go to these user group meetings. They're the people that are hiring. So the more people you can meet, and people at these user group meetings that are already members, they're there to schmooze as well. Nobody stays in a job forever. So if you meet somebody new, you should be asking, oh, where do you work? Well, what type of role do you have in that organization? Well, that's interesting. Are you hiring people that are entry level? What do you need those people to know? You know, they're more than happy to tell you. And then you'll know if you're doing the right thing. And they'll say, oh, we need somebody at least got Linux Plus or knows how to set up a VPN. Like, oh, I got those two things. And then you can start having those conversations. Or they'll tell you something completely different. And they'll tell you, well, we really need somebody who's very familiar with setting up a SIM. And they may even have a specific one. We need somebody who really knows Splunk. Well, you can download Splunk. It's free to download and run. You probably got a server or some other machine running in your lab that can send syslog information. Get Splunk, gathering syslog data from one of those, and start creating reports. That one skill. I was even my last job where I was setting up firewalls. If somebody was just coming in the door behind me after me installing a firewall and offered to set up someone's SIM, that's all they'd be doing their entire life because nobody has time to do those types of things properly. Those are the types of skills that hiring a professional in that particular role will raise their eyebrow and go, tell me what you've done with Splunk. Because he probably has some type of syslog receiver that they paid money for that's sitting on a machine that they paid too much money for that's not doing anything, and they need somebody to come in and do those types of things. Those are the roles that nobody has time for, but everybody wants. You need to specialize and find a niche that you really like. Maybe it's server administration. Maybe it's workstation administration. Maybe you've got a very specially honed way of imaging 100 machines at one time from one server that you have. Whatever it is, find that thing that interests you, dive into it so that you can have a very technical conversation with somebody about what you did, how you did it, and maybe even demonstrate it on your phone when you're sitting in front of them. And that goes a long way when you're in these interviews.
Oh, thank you very much, Professor. I appreciate you taking my call.
Absolutely. Thanks for calling, Chad. We've got more people on the phone, and they've been holding a long time. So thank you for those of you that are holding right now. We've got some questions coming in, but I want to take at least these next two very quick because you've been holding forever. 330 area code. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Yeah, I'm Jim from Pennsylvania.
Hello, Jim. What a great name. Tell me what you got for us today.
All right. I guess I have a little bit more unusual question than your typical call.
Well, I'm ready for that.
All right. So I've been in IT for close to 10 years now. And I'm looking to change. I've mainly been doing some administration in the public sector, handling everything from, MDMs for school systems to even I started right out of college doing mainframe operations. Yes, there's still some out there.
Yes, there are.
And I'm doing that right now, again, at a larger company because nobody under the age of 40 has even sat in front of an AS400.
Suddenly a valuable skill. Who knew?
Right. So I'm being paid well. I have crappy hours. I work long hours, and I'm finally making that pivot to start to specialize.
Right.
And I've always enjoyed security, and it's been 8 to 10 years since I've been in college, and I'm thinking I'm going to take the Security Plus exam. I've been looking at it off and on for the past few months. I'm more or less wondering whether or not I'm wasting my time. for the simple fact that 89% of the stuff is some stuff I've seen, daily for the past 10 years.
Right. The thing about security is that most of the people, I don't think I'm overspeaking this at all, but most of the people working in IT security today didn't start in IT security because there wasn't an IT security group 20 years ago.
Absolutely.
So I also come from these big financial companies running IBM mainframes and doing the CICS and adding in and putting together terminal gateways to these devices. But everything overlaps. This technology never goes away. It only evolves into something else. We were doing virtualization on mainframes a very long time ago. Now we're doing virtualization and it's on, people are acting like it's something new. This is nothing new. We've been doing this forever. This is just another way to do it. And so it's very easy in your particular position where you already have this foundation of knowledge to build on. And you see this all the time in our industry, is a simple pivot. I pivoted from someone delivering printer cables into somebody who could talk on the phone in a very large company on people how to plug in their printer. And I pivoted there to someone who could help them set up their workstations, and pivoted from there into somebody who could connect those workstations together on a very large network, and pivoted from there into security. But I couldn't see the security role back when I was delivering cables. There's no way I would have even imagined that things would have evolved to where they've even come today. We didn't even have the internet back then. How could I have thought there would be a way to stream video live and be able to do this how we're doing it? So you just have to keep building on what you know. And you've got some great foundational knowledge that you can now add a little sprinkle to. In my case, whenever I was working at the help desk, I went and got some Microsoft certifications. And people were like, oh, Microsoft, you could help us with our workstations. I'm like, yes, I could. I know Windows in and out. I can do a deployment system. I can set up automation. They're like, yes, you need to come work in our department. I didn't even leave the company. I just stayed, and now I'm working with the desktop team. And from there, I got very interested in networking, and I got some CNX certifications, which were the networking certifications of the day on Ethernet, Token Ring, and FIDI, and cabling. And those are technologies people haven't heard of today, but that was what we were using, and then pivoted into the networking side of things. But it was easier to pivot than it is to get in the door. So if you've already, quite honestly, done the hard part, you've gotten in the door, and you've got a very good technical job working with some very high level technical topics, technical items. These mainframes and setting up all of these different systems is no laughing matter. It's a very precise, and it's a very well respected, although becoming more rare, type of position in IT. So make sure that you use that and pivot on it. There's no reason to start over. And at this point, you should know a lot of people in the industry. And if you haven't, that may be the easiest thing that you will do, is start calling around. You should have a very good LinkedIn at this point.
There you
go.
Got tons of people on
that is the ultimate connection for IT. Yeah, go ahead.
I guess the focus of my question is, should I be looking at some of these lower level certificates such as Security+, and even like the next jump in CompTIA for the security? I'm blanking on the name for it right now. But
so are most of the employers.
Focusing on those?
The real question is, what are the potential employers looking for? So one good thing you can do is go to the dice.com or whatever the particular job site that you'd like to go to, and do some searches for your geography on what employers are looking for. How many of them are looking for Security+? How many are looking for CSA+ or CISA+? How many are looking for CASP? How many are looking for Palo Alto Networks? How many are looking for Checkpoint? How many are looking for CCNA? How many are looking for the VMware certifications? And see if you can start getting some type of of overview. Document these things. Build a spreadsheet and say, I can see what everybody's looking for in this area. These all seem to be from these particular companies. See if you can start building these things together and see what your particular geography is emphasizing. If you're in Washington, D.C., like Fernando, then you're going to want to get Security Plus almost always. But if you're in L.A., it's going to be a different set of expectations. If you're in Seattle, there's probably going to be more Microsoft emphasis. So it really does depend on where you happen to live. That might help you trying to figure out exactly which direction to go. I didn't know that I'd be going into security, but when I saw what people were doing with some of these technologies, I said, I got to be part of what they're doing, and went that direction. And it sort of suddenly just exploded right then. It was a pretty good timing to do that sort of thing. You can do exactly the same thing with what you're interested in. It's now just a matter of sort of gathering the metrics and talking to people who are doing the hiring at some of these user group meetings or on LinkedIn and finding out what do I have to do to get to work with you guys that are doing this cool stuff over here. And they're going to be more than happy to tell you.
All right. So, take a look at the field around me and just communicate with the handful of security guys that I do know currently.
Oh, absolutely. Put out some feelers and let them know, hey, I'm looking to make a move pretty soon. If you hear anything, let me know. And they of course, are talking to other people in their particular area. They might not have anything, but they know that Bill and the company down the road certainly is looking for folks, and they might be able to set you up and have a love connection there. That happens all the time. Make sure you let people know that you might be looking around, stick some feelers out. If you hear anything, let me know. People are very good at doing that.
All right. I appreciate your advice.
Best of luck, Jim. Let us know how it goes.
All right. Will do.
Take care. That's always, it's hard when you get into a job like this. You've been working somewhere 10 years. I worked 5 years at that insurance company, and then I went outside the company. I left and went to work for another company. It's hard to make those moves. Just the process of moving and taking a new job, it's very stressful. There's all kinds of changes that happen. You got to think about your health insurance and what am I going to do with my 401k, and there's all those things. But you get it into a rhythm after a while. You're going to be doing this a lot. You're not going to stay at your job forever. So don't worry about the details so much as finding the right next step for you. I didn't always pick the right next step. Sometimes I'd move into a job and thought a month in, I thought, this was a bad idea. This was not the job I was thinking. Happens all the time. That's okay. You pivot. Find what your next step is going to be. Where do I want to go next? What do I want to do next? And go do that. Figure out how to get there. If you don't make the goal, you'll never reach it. There's no way you're going to be able to bridge that gap, but you have to. Back to the phones real quick. You've been waiting forever. 470 area code. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Professor Mesa. My name is Z from Georgia.
Well, thanks for holding for so long. What can we do for you?
I wanted to say something about I think the last two callers. I remember him saying that he works in a warehouse. He's 38 years old, and stuff like that.
Yep.
What I want to say is that it's not too late to dive into technology, because I'm 37 years old myself. I just got my first job in IT.
Nice.
And also somebody made mention about not having experience. I used to work in a warehouse. I think I worked in a warehouse for like 5 years. So this is my first IT job, and I didn't have any experience. But what I actually did was, after getting my degree and about 2 certification, like you said, I set up a lab virtually myself on my laptop. I was able to beef up my laptop, and I set up my lab on the laptop. So during the interview, this is something that I told the interviewer, this is what I've been doing, this is what I've set up in my laptop, and I showed them the things that I was doing. And so that was how I was able to get the job.
It is remarkable how well that particular technique works in a job environment where you can show somebody, because you don't know. I have interviewed so many people in IT, and the conversation is almost always high level. Sometimes we'll ask technical questions. Tell me everything you know about the ARP protocol. and we'll have that kind of conversation. But I still don't know if they know how to apply it. And having something that you've done that you can show somebody in the interview, that is some powerful stuff. And I guarantee you, not everybody walking in the door is taking advantage of that. That is, thank you for the validation there. Thank you for sharing that particular part of what you're doing. The technology doesn't care how old you are. It's more about what you want to do. Is there another specific question you had?
Yeah, my question was, I have my network class right now, and then I think I'm due to renew it in August of this year. But I've also been studying for my Security Plus that I'm planning in taking it probably in the next 2 months.
Okay.
So what I wanted to know is, do I go and wait and renew my network plus, or I should just shoot and then take the Security Plus? And then how also do I try and get CEUs to renew my network plus?
Well, one good thing that CompTIA does, and I like that they do this, is that if you take a higher level CompTIA exam, it will automatically renew all of the lower level exams that you happen to hold. So if you held an A+ and a Network Plus right now, and they were 2.5 years, they were coming up for renewal in 6 months, and then you went out and took your Security Plus right now and passed it, your Network Plus, your A+ would automatically renew immediately with a renewal date that matches what your Security Plus exam was. So and what's nice about this, you don't have to accumulate CEUs. And if you're taking a CompTIA exam to renew other CompTIA certifications, you don't even have to pay them anything for renewal fees. There's no cost at all to renew when you're taking a higher level CompTIA exam. So it's great. You don't have to do the CEU counting. You don't have to pay the annual maintenance fee because you're keeping it in the family. You're keeping it all CompTIA, and you're just taking that newer one to renew. That's the easiest way to renew some of these other certifications that people might have.
Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely. Good luck with that.
I also want to thank you.
Sure.
I also want to thank you for what you're doing. Helping us out.
You're welcome, sir. Glad to do it. These are great stories, and it's nice to be able to link together some of the practical knowledge, the things like you've had, where you've had these jobs and being able to work through it. So congratulations to you as well.
Thank you.
Take care. That is some practical. I can tell you the way it went in my career. I can tell you about the jobs I worked, the things I did in the technical arenas, but I like hearing those stories where, yeah, you can do it. My first job was working in the blueberry field, hoeing those weeds. The second was refinishing pianos. Dude, that was if you ever need a job where you need to smell things, that's a great job. And lastly, before I got into technology, it was working in a video rental store. So everybody's got to start somewhere with these things. And I'll explain later what a video rental store was to some of you others. Instead, we're going to go to the 915 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name? 915. There you go. I heard you come off on mute. Yay! Who am I talking to?
Thank you for taking my call. This is Ray from Texas.
Hey, Ray. Welcome.
Long-time listener, first-time caller.
Well, thank you for calling, sir.
I just very similar situation to the last two callers. I'm 55, been working in IT for 20 years, and it's always surprised me how the lack of Linux has come back and haunted me.
It seems to be everywhere, doesn't it?
Yes, and I barely started getting into security. I'm almost getting ready to ace that test. Self-confidence is one of those things that has helped me. I'm multi-certified. I'm a jack of all trades, but a master of none. And
sort of how it works in IT.
With the previous caller. Yeah. And so I touch base on a lot of the technologies. Yeah. Go
Sure.
ahead. Yeah.
So what is the part that you're...
Can you hear me?
Absolutely. Go ahead, Ray.
Yeah. Well, that was so I have all these knowledge of all these subjects, but my question was once I get this new one, I'm into wireless, Cisco, Aruba, HP, and now security. So I was thinking, should I go for my Linux Plus, or does it make a difference if I get it from the Linux project foundation, as long as it's Linux certification? But then again, it will be just a continuation of the jack of all trades, master of none journey that I've been on unwillingly, but I'm there.
Well, it's in IT, there's so many different topics people can run into, and there's a lot of employers that want somebody that has a broad knowledge across a lot of different areas. If you go to work for a service provider or somebody who's providing outsourced services for these companies, they need somebody who has knowledge across the board of all of these different technologies, and then they'll find specific things that you need to learn once you're there. So they may need somebody who understands VPNs, the Windows 10 operating system, and a little bit of Mac. Well, that's a bunch of different, that's a very broad setting of different things, but those are the types of customers they have that they have to provide services for. So there are jobs out there that need that very broad perspective. Sometimes, though, you'll find that if you can focus on a particular technology and be an expert in one particular area, you're going to find there's other options available. And I'll take, for example, my last big role was one as a systems engineer at Palo Alto Networks. And I knew a huge amount of information about that particular firewall platform. I could tell you a little bit about Checkpoint. I could tell you a little bit about these other firewall platforms because I got some hands-on, but I really knew the details of the Palo Alto Networks. And I could do site-to-site VPNs. We could set up the firewall rules to the 7-layer analysis of the applications. I could allow Twitter but block people posting. It was a remarkable technology, and there weren't a lot of people in the world that had that level of knowledge of that particular platform. So it was good to have that expertise. But one of the things that you'd run into is occasionally you'd hit a technology because nobody knows everything about everything, Ray. There's just no way. But every once in a while you hit a technology where you need an expert. And if you're going into a place that's running a very complex BGP implementation, I know enough to set up BGP in a normal, but this one was really big. I pulled in my BGP guy who could really help us with the details of that. Or if I was running into a scenario where I needed to integrate with Active Directory and I wasn't familiar enough with what they were doing with this Active Directory tree to feel comfortable, I needed to pull in the Active Directory folks. So there were always these key people that had this very niche knowledge that was very powerful, and you just need to find what niche is interesting to you, and then you need to find the company that can use that niche. My particular job was one where I traveled a lot. I was the guy who flew in, helped you design the system, and then I would fly to the next one and do the same thing. And so I was flying all over the eastern United States, up to DC, back down to Georgia, down to Puerto Rico, back to North Carolina. We were all over the place. And so there's always advantages and disadvantages to a job, but they knew I had a particular knowledge in that niche that nobody else had. Let's get him where he needs to be. There's a lot of companies that will do that. The Ciscos of the world, the Palo Alto Networks of the world, the Microsofts of the world need good field people that have that niche knowledge. Maybe that's a direction you might want to think about going as well. It's all about figuring out what your next step is going to be. And when we get to be our age, Ray, it becomes a little bit, we have different priorities. We don't really want to be dancing around a bunch of security at the airport and running from place to place anymore. It'd be nice to sit down every once in a while and do something stationary. So I guess it depends on what your personal goals might be as well.
Yes, that will be my next goal. Get down Linux, and then by then, hopefully, I'll be able to look into retirement. Appreciate your time, sir. Thanks, you very much.
I appreciate it. That's a great niche, too. Linux is one of those technologies that everybody has. Everybody has Linux. Some people have a little bit of Linux. Some people have a lot of Linux. Ray didn't say where in Texas he was from, but if you're in the San Antonio area, you got Rackspace that love to bring people in, train them on Linux and other technologies, and then put them in practical jobs working with these types of things. Companies are out there that are looking for that knowledge. It'd be something to do. There are people in the chat room asked about volunteering. What opportunities are out there for volunteering within IT? Tons of opportunities. There's plenty of organizations, especially charitable organizations or nonprofits that need people to help with IT. And it may be seasonal, it might be project oriented, or it may be something where they need somebody to come in once a week for a month and set up antivirus or organize the routing or whatever it happens to be. Those types of things are valuable as well. And being able to volunteer is something you can put on your resume. So if you go out to some of these volunteer websites and see where do people need volunteers for information technology, you may be able to piece some of those things together and ask around. Ask family members, ask somebody who knows somebody who works there. Those are important things, and call them. Don't be afraid to pick up the phone and say, I got your name from my Aunt Susan. She knows Becky, who works in accounting, who gave me your number and said you guys were doing some setting up of some systems this weekend and needed some warm bodies. I'm more than happy to help. Those are the things that go a long way when you're sitting in front of somebody on a resume interview and they say, what have you done? Like, well, last weekend we did this great project where we set this thing up that had to do, and for people that are working with nonprofits or charitable organizations, they're usually doing something really great for the world. So it's great that you're able to say, we set up these systems. They're going to be training people to get better jobs in doing this thing. That's a great project to be involved with. Might as well take advantage of something like that. Back to the phones, 260 area code. Whoa, hello caller. Are you there? What's your name? Where are you calling from?
My name is DeMarcus.
Hello.
I'm calling from Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Welcome, DeMarcus. What can we do for you?
Well,
and I pushed the wrong button. DeMarcus, call back. That was my fault. I pushed the wrong button. Just as he was going to ask the question, I'm moving things around on my screen. I need a real mouse. I'm sorry, DeMarcus. Call back. I will see you call in. I will pick it up pronto so that you don't have to hit the redial button very quickly. So you can get in on the screening queue. We've gone another hour, so I know that the calls are starting to slow down a little bit. We've been able to get to them. So make sure you're able to call back in. I'm going to give you a second more to call back in and see if you can pop up in the screening queue there and see that one come in. That was completely my fault. I apologize. I am so sorry. See, this is why I need a staff. I need a staff of hundreds who can take my calls and screen them for me so that all I need to do is pick up the phone and have those things come in. That's what I need to work on the most, is have those things happen. It's kind of a challenge, though, to find that there's really just me. It's just me. There's nobody else here. So I'm the one that has to make the screening come through and make those things happen so that we can get everything working right. But it works pretty well. I think we're having a pretty good time with this. I'm going to quickly take another call, though, on the 520 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name? 520.
Hello, it's Steve. Are you?
Hello, Steve. What can we do for you?
I'm working on the Security Plus, and you said I've got an expired Network Plus. Is that going to come back alive?
Oh, wouldn't that be nice if the certifications that have died, they've been 3 years and they've expired. Wouldn't it be nice if they came back to life? But they don't. CompTIA does not renew certifications that have expired. Even if you get a higher level certification, they won't do it. And I've tried. I've even told people, why don't you call them and just ask, just beg, can you please renew this for me? No, they will not. They will not budge. They will not do it as much as you beg and plead and cry on the phone. So unfortunately, no. Once a certification is expired, you've got this 3-year lifespan. After 3 years, if it's not renewed, you're going to have to take the certification exam again.
Oh, so Yeah, what you were saying earlier, that I guess they renew if they've not expired.
Correct. So
right?
you've had your Network Plus for 2.5 years. You got to do something in the next 6 months, and then you take the Security Plus. It will renew the already active Network Plus that you have available. But if Network Plus had already expired, if it had been more than 3 years and you took Network Plus, it's not getting Network Plus back. It's dead, Jim. There's nothing you're going to be able to do.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Sorry about that, Steve, but that's maybe. And again,
Yep.
I still tell people, call CompTIA and beg. You never know. Maybe you get somebody with a soft spot in their heart.
Okay, will do.
Best of luck, Steve. That's always a challenge. I kind of wish they would. Give me a 6-month overlap. Give me just a little more time, and maybe I can make that happen. And DeMarcus did not call back. I feel bad about that. But you're more than welcome at any time to send me messages on my website. At the top or the bottom is the Contact Us link, and that comes directly to me. And sometimes if it's something I can answer quickly, I can send you a message back and we have a conversation going that way to have those happen as well. I apologize, DeMarcus, for not being not handling my mouse properly. That happens to me sometimes. I'm not ashamed. I'm just telling you, you know what it is? It's this pad. It's this mouse pad. I really need a legitimate mouse. It's one that if you tap just delicately, it clicks. Yeah, that's just waiting for a problem on my side. From the chat room, so here's a problem, and this is a legitimate thing, where someone has 46 years old, graduated with an IT degree, and not getting any callbacks. And, well, that does happen. That happens whether you're young and you're trying to get a job. You don't get a lot of callbacks, sort of the process of interviewing. And do some of the things that I mentioned earlier. It's not just about going to the website and filling out the applications and sending it in. If you can send your application in another way, if you already know somebody who works there, if you know someone who's a friend of the family who works there, who's not in IT, but they know the people in IT, if you go to the user group meeting and meet these people directly and you join them on LinkedIn, you connected them on LinkedIn, you let them know you're looking for these jobs, those are things that can help you. So those can get around some of the roadblocks you'll run into. It's not really about necessarily always finding the exact right set of requirements for a job that you meet. It's about finding the people in the organization who can get you in the door. And then it's the hiring manager's job to figure out if you're right for this position or not. You just need to go in and get in the door and sit in front of them. That's a pretty important thing to have. That's the hardest part, I think, of trying to get in there, because that's when you really know you're on. It's a make or break when you finally get in the interview room and you're sitting across from somebody. I've had some awful interviews and I've had some great interviews. So sometimes it depends on the chemistry you have with the person you're sitting across from. Sometimes you just have to force the chemistry. You have to really make sure you get out. You should have a list of things you know you want to cover. You should have a set of questions you know you're going to want to ask. It should not be you in the interview and them saying, "So you have any questions for me?" "Oh, I didn't think about asking you questions." No, you should already have a list of things you really want to know about. Don't waste time. People are interviewing you. They can smell the bad questions. They can smell the setup. You should really have things you really want to know about. Oh, I was reading in your last update online that you're working on this project in this particular place. That sounded interesting to me. Are you involved with that? Those are very things you really want to know about that the interviewer can really help as well for those. Also in the chat room, more of a question about the website. Somebody who purchased the digital version of the course notes, and now you've said, "I really want the book version of the course notes. Can I get an upgrade?" Yes, you can. Go to the top or the bottom of my website, click the Contact Us link, send me a note, and I can send you a coupon that will discount what you already paid so that you don't have to pay it again. So that might help. That's a nice incremental. You can pay for a little bit this month, pay for a little bit next month. Maybe that's how we do it. And then I can put in the order for you and have that shipped right to you. Some people have asked when I ship the books if I signed them, but they're shipped out of Minnesota. I'm in Florida. So unfortunately, I don't have a way to do that. I apologize. Sorry about that. So anyway, that's one of those that does help. Somebody in the chat room also talking about the new stackable certifications. Don't know if you've seen those. Let me find the stackable certifications. I don't know that a lot of people who are hiring managers have figured out the stackable thing yet. This is relatively new from CompTIA, where you can have a CompTIA infrastructure career pathway and a CompTIA cybersecurity career pathway. For the infrastructure, they're stacking for the infrastructure specialist job, A+ and Network+. That's your operations specialist. The systems support specialist would be A+ and Linux+. So they're combining some of these things together and giving you options to say, here's another certification you can layer on top of it, which maybe hiring managers aren't specifically asking for, but it's something that you can always bring up in the interview. Well, I've got my Network+ and my Linux+, which means I'm a CompTIA Linux network professional because we went through more than just the Linux. I have the networking side, so I've got a little bit of both. That's a nice combination. And it's worth bringing up, even if a hiring manager doesn't know about that combination, it's worth mentioning to them because they're going to at least know you've gone through the process for figuring out those pieces and having them there. I must have dropped DeMarcus completely. He's not even bothering. He's angry. He's not calling back. He's had it with me. But also in the chat room, let's go back, find some other questions that were here. And another good point. So somebody even mentioned that help desk is always doing hiring. Help desk is the place people bring you into the help desk. I think this was during the call where people were saying, should I start on the help desk? Should I be striving higher to go higher in the organization? Well, of course you should, but a lot of organizations don't want you to start higher in their organization. They start you in the help desk because now they get to see how you work. They get to see how you handle customer service. They get to see how you handle pressure. They get to see how you handle technology and how you learn from those things. So make sure that if somebody says, we have a help desk available, my first job in that, once I got into that insurance company, was at the help desk. And then from there moved into desktop support and then moved into networking and then moved into farther than that. So I was happy to get to the help desk because that was a great shot in. And even if that's one where you have to make a decision on what you're trying to do. So if somebody in the chat room was mentioning got 10 years in doing this type of thing, maybe not the United States, should you look for a job as entry level? Well, no. Technology around the world is the same. I would fly to Scotland to install technology, which was the same technology we were installing in the United States. So it didn't matter whether I was in London or Brussels or Sydney, it was the same technology. So you should be able to take the knowledge that you have wherever you're coming from because it's probably Cisco or it's Microsoft or it's Linux. It's the same Cisco. It's the same Microsoft. It's the same Linux they have anywhere else in the world. So don't think that that's not valuable because it is. And maybe you may not know anybody in the United States. That's a big challenge. Maybe that's where you should be focusing on is building up your LinkedIn, visiting those user group meetings, getting the business cards of those people and conversing with them about what they're doing and figuring out how can I meet people in this country because it's not just about what you know, it is indeed about who you know. And a good point. And unlike medicine or law, you probably have the same certification. If you got the A+ certification in Sydney, you got the Network+ certification in Bangkok, it's exactly the same certification as you got in Walla Walla, Washington. So you've got some great opportunities from what you already know that you can build on. And I worked in an organization in that insurance company. We had people from Russia. We had people from Haiti. We had people from Jamaica. We had people from Canada. We had just a mix. We were all doing the same thing. So it really didn't matter. That's in fact, if you're from another place and you know that language in the other place, assuming it's something other than English, that's also valuable in IT, more than you might even realize, especially if it's with a multinational organization that has offices everywhere. Oh, you can actually talk to the people at this site about the things we need, you're hired. We need somebody who can speak that language. Sometimes that goes a long way for having them there. Let's quickly go back to the phone calls. 260 area code. Hey there, caller. What's your name?
Hi, my name is DeMarcus.
I'm not touching it, DeMarcus. You can talk now. I'm not touching the computer. I'm very sorry.
No problem. My question, or really, I just wanted to say that I really wanted to thank you because I was at a point in my life where I was going through somewhat of a midlife crisis, if that's what you want to call it. I was a factory worker for over 15 years and decided to go into networking truly just because I love computers and like tinkering or whatever. And you were like the one thing that I popped up in YouTube. Like I was just learning, like, or I Googled, what should I study or what should I do? Like, and like YouTube, you popped up and I literally sat for an entire semester and watched your N10 05 Network Plus. And
way back,
never knowing anything about computers. Never knowing anything about computers or anything. My professor, I was at work and I would listen to you all day for like 8 hours. And when I would come to class at night, people swore like I was in the industry from way back and knowing protocols and stuff like that. And they were like, this is like, and literally I haven't been in class in over 15 years or anything with technology-wise, but you, sir, truly set off, jumpstart what I got going on right now.
That's a great story. And to be quite honestly, I did the easy part. It's easy to make the video. It's more difficult to actually do something with them. So congratulations to you. That's a great story.
I truly wanted to thank you for that. But my question is right now, I'm finishing my associate's degree. Next, I have one credit. I have one credit to take, and I see they're going to be Security+ or CCNA.
Okay.
And I'm really like leaning towards Security+, but I feel CCNA will really help my degree if I was to present it to someone. And I just really wanted to know, is CCNA really worth it? Because I feel security is like huge. But to say I'm Cisco certified is another huge thing. Like I'm just at a crossing point right now. And the semester again, I'm like halfway through it. So it's almost to the point to where I have to make a decision next summer to either take Security+ or CCNA.
It's such a good question because it's a common one, and it's if this was a perfect world, let's do both. But we also have to consider there's actual life and there's a lot of study that goes into these certifications that a lot of people don't recognize or don't realize. And plus, you've got you're coming up on a particular jumping off point. It's another pivot point where you're going to be moving from maybe formal education and getting degrees to something more practical in an actual job. And that's one where, it becomes a little more challenging. A lot of this is going to depend on your personal goals and objectives. I've often said in these Security+ study groups that the more knowledge you have in networking, the better security professional you're going to be. And I can't tell you how important that is for anything that you're going to be doing with security. It is so useful to be able to talk, even starting simple. If you know about IP subnetting, it makes it so much simpler to install VPNs. Just the little foundational things that you learn in networking become so useful and so important when you get into the security role. But if I also mentioned that this is often geography based. If you're near Washington, D.C., Security+ probably is your priority over something like Cisco. But if you're in Dallas, there might be a completely different set of priorities. Plus, one of the things that I always liked, I really got into networking. I loved the networking part. And if I was faced with that decision today, knowing what I knew about what was going to be happening on the security side, I'd probably still go with the Cisco stuff. I'd probably still go with the networking side. But if you are interested in security, just think of the networking piece as the next step before you get into the security role. As I mentioned earlier, it also will depend on how many entry-level security positions really might be in your particular area. So go out to dice.com, run a search query for Security Plus, see who's asking for that in your area versus who's asking for CCNA. It's a great place to see what the differences are. There might be a very big difference between them, or there might not. It really depends on where you live. That might be a good place to start.
Okay. All right. Definitely some good advice. Like I said, definitely want to thank you for, like I said, jump starting. You gave me I got an A in that my networking fundamental class, and I can truly say it's because of you.
That's great. That's fantastic.
That's like I did the studying, but I truly for a year straight, I just listened to the at that time it was the 005.
Yeah, we didn't even have the study groups really going at that time either. So you were suffering listening to me for 8 hours as bad as Mrs. Professor Messer is listening to me for 8 hours. So congratulations to you, if only for doing that. I appreciate that, sir. Thank you, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Take care. I'm glad we were able to get DeMarcus back on the phone. That was a great story too. See, anybody can do this. You just need to apply it and get it in there. And quite honestly, take Security Plus or the Cisco stuff. Either way, you're doing pretty good. That's a great decision to have to make between those two. The 773 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name?
Yes. Hi, Professor.
Hello.
My name is Sanju. Hi. I'm Sonia. I'm calling from Chicago.
Welcome.
And I have a question about the career track of information security or cybersecurity. I'm not really convinced I would like to pursue network security or penetration testing. I'm more, I like the user interface and the human side of information security. So my question is for those of us who prefer working with users or the procedures and the policies, what do you recommend is a good niche and for us in the entry level that we could, or rather the entry level of positions that we could go into?
Well, you are, in many ways, you're in luck because the information technology security professional, what they're sort of calling cybersecurity. This term cybersecurity is sort of caught on during the last year, but it doesn't really mean anything because I don't have any cybers that I need to secure. But the vast majority of jobs in IT security are the ones that you're mentioning. You're having to create policies and procedures and document those things. You're having to implement some type of SIM or some type of consolidated log reporting system. You're needing to set up IPsec tunnels with your partners or your other parts of your organization. You're needing to create VPN concentration logins for the people that are out in the field that need to access their resources. You're needing to create certificates within your organization for users. You're needing to create certificates for the web server implementations. You need to set up firewalls, intrusion prevention, content filtering, be able to identify malware quickly, be able to eradicate malware in your environment. And these are all things where you're working with the end user. These are all things where you're building a security system so that the people who are working in your company are able to do their job as quickly and easily as possible with you being as invisible as possible, but still providing the security. Those are the vast majority of the jobs that you find with IT security. So already you're looking at a very good number of the positions that are available out there. And you had mentioned things like you didn't want to do penetration testing. Hardly anybody does penetration testing. There may be a little bit of it that you do as part of that role, but it's usually an internal test. You're doing some in-map scans during the week. Maybe you've set off some automated systems at night to scan around and provide you with some reports. But we always have, or at least the industry has positioned the penetration tester as this is the job you need in security. But the reality is there's a small percentages of jobs out there available to do that type of thing. That it's just not something that's a common role that you will find in almost any organization. They need somebody who's very knowledgeable. So let's get to your question, which is how do you get that job? What are the employers really looking for to be able to put somebody into those positions? One of the things they look for, and I mentioned, was how much networking you know, because there is a nice networking component associated with that. It's not an absolute, but it helps a lot, because that helps you along with implementing some of the technologies that I just spoke about. But you also need somebody who's very good at things like documenting. Being able to communicate with other human beings is an important role, is an important skill that unfortunately we don't have enough people in IT able to really hone that skill very well. And if you're creating security policies, you're presenting them in front of other people in your organization. You're having to talk to other parts of the organization to build these policies. You need someone HR that can integrate into these policies. You got to talk to people in legal that can integrate with these policies that you're creating. You need to talk to the management of your company. These are all just sitting down in a meeting and figuring out and trying to hammer out what these policies are going to be. You aren't even touching a keyboard yet. You might even be writing down with a pen these things that you need to do. But what you need are some basic foundational skills. Security Plus comes to mind, but when you get into these IT security roles, it tends to fork off a little bit after that. Some people do get the CEH, or they get a CISA Plus that CompTIA is offering these days that gives you a little more practical security experience, because now you're using some in-map scans and you're performing some of these practical jobs. But at that point, a lot of employers are looking for very specific industry manufacturer certifications. So if it's a company that has Palo Alto Network firewalls, they may want somebody who has a Palo Alto Networks certification. If they have Checkpoint firewalls, they may be looking for someone who has a Checkpoint certification. If they have Cisco firewalls, they may be looking for the Cisco certification. So there's a lot of fracturing at that point where you end up having to figure out which area you want to go down and become more of an expert in that particular certification, because it's rare that you'd find somebody who has the Cisco firewall, the Checkpoint firewall, and the Palo Alto Network firewall certification, because nobody has that much time in the day to study for all these certifications. There are some out there, but it's kind of a rare thing. Usually you're focusing on one particular kind of technology that an employer is looking for, and you're focusing and kind of finding that niche to fit in for that employer and then building out from that niche. So it may be that if you have an idea of a particular employer you're interested in, find out what type of technologies they're using. Find out what they're looking for. Do they want somebody who already has this certification, or are they able to hire somebody with the goal of getting that certification? These are the things that are more difficult to find out. Those are really hard things to know. So you almost have to be part of the Cisco user group or the Palo Alto Networks user group and talk to those people directly, get on their LinkedIn and start querying them about what makes sense for the type of job that I'm looking for. Does this make sense in your organization? What would you recommend that I do next? And maybe that's the best way to go.
That makes perfect sense. I just have a quick follow-up
Sure.
question from saying about the specific niches, about the certs and the training. I'm interested in medical devices. Do you have anything that you could recommend there?
The world of hospitals is its own ecosystem. Mrs. Professor Messer is a registered nurse. She is very familiar with the world of the hospital, and it's its own self-contained entity that has its own very specific requirements. And well, it should. If you're working for an insurance company and a server goes down, that means somebody doesn't get a printout. If you're working in a hospital and a server goes down, there are literally lives at stake. It's a very different working environment. But it's it's one where you really have to find out what a particular environment is looking for. A lot of the things overlap with other companies. So a hospital might be using a Palo Alto Networks firewall, but I guarantee you from a security perspective, they have a completely different set of requirements because they have a need for a nurse to walk up to any terminal on a floor, log in or start typing and have it automatically know that's who they are, perform whatever function they need for that patient, and when they walk away, it needs to resecure itself. Well, how do you do that? Do you use RFID? Do you use some other technology? That's a type of function that you don't see in an insurance company, that you don't necessarily see in a manufacturing environment. It's one that's very unique to hospitals. Same thing with people needing to get medical records and especially when you talk about HIPAA and trying to keep security of the healthcare information in there. So now you're overlaying all of these different requirements that do allow for a niche. If you were someone who became very, very well honed in whatever system they were using to provide that temporary login and security, or you became an expert in things associated with HIPAA and how they're associated with the security technologies you're using, you'd be a pretty valuable person in a hospital environment. It'd be worth your time to find the people that work there, find out if a lot of them go to these user group meetings. A lot of the hospitals in my area sponsor the user group meetings because they always have these big seating areas that they can bring people in. Those are great people to know and to find out more about what they need, because you're going to get a different answer from them than if you ask somebody at an insurance company. There'll be a little bit of overlap, but you're going to find some very unique things about a medical environment that's different than really anywhere else.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your website, the chat room, and all the tutorials. And
great.
Thank you.
You're absolutely welcome. That's great to hear. I appreciate you taking advantage of those, and thank you for calling. One of those things that helps a lot. Well, we've gone for an hour and 40 minutes in the post show, something we don't commonly do. But I appreciate all your calls. Thank you for sticking around for the first hour. Thank you for being in the chat room. And if you've stuck with us this entire time, you should probably get yourself checked. I have no idea why you're still here listening to this, but there you are. And I'm sure happy that you're here. I want to thank you for being here. We do another one of these next month. Keep checking in. We're doing, in fact, because it has exactly 28 days this month, March the 21st, we'll be doing another Security Plus. We skip a week and we start with our A Plus, and then the next Wednesday is Network Plus, and the next Wednesday we're back to doing Security Plus. We'd like to see you back here again. Thanks for joining us this time. We will see you next time on the Security Plus Study Group.